I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Thursday, September 14th, 2017 regular meeting of the Napa Valley Community College District Board of Trustees. Cynthia, can we get a roll call?
Yes. Jennifer Baker.
Here.
Amy Martinson.
Here.
Marianne Mancuso.
Here.
Kyle Iverson. Here. Michael Baldini. Rosada Segura.
Here.
Rafael Rios.
Here.
Manveer Sandhu.
Just say here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Down to item number 3, public comment on closed session items. So at this time, we're going to allow 15 minutes for comments on closed session items. I do not have any comment cards. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on closed session items? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public session, and we will be moving to the closed session where we will be discussing the item 4.1, conference with labor negotiators, and item 4.2, public employment of the position of interim dean, arts and humanities. Recess.
Let's try this one. I think this is.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and we are on agenda item number 5, return to public session. 5.1, announcement of items from closed session. We do have one item to announce. We hired by unanimous vote Michelle Mano as interim dean, arts and humanities. Okay, 5.2. Jennifer, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. 5.3, adoption of the agenda. Any questions or comments on the agenda? None. The agenda is adopted as presented. 6 has been removed. We move on to 7, public comment. At this time, we will devote a total of up to 15 minutes for comments to the Board of Trustees regarding any subject not appearing as an agenda item for this meeting, but over which the Board has jurisdiction. The public may ask the Board to place an item related to the business of the district on a future agenda. No action or discussion will occur at this time on any such items. Individuals will be limited to 5-minute presentations. And at this time, it looks like I do have a couple of comment cards, and we'll go in alphabetical order here with Cynthia, is it Keener?
Yes. Was it general comment, Mr. Chair?
Public comment is what it says.
Sorry, I have a pretty loud voice, but I want to make sure. Hi, do you remember me, Cynthia Keener? I was here for several months previously. Okay, it's good to see you again. I hope you've had a wonderful summer. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you, the board, for welcoming back here. Thank you, I appreciate it. And thank you for keeping your eyes and ears open for regarding our concerns of the deaf community. Thank you for providing the wonderful interpreters who can interpret for me and for everybody here as well. I want to talk about Jennifer Lopes. She was an instructor here, an ASL instructor here previously. I've always heard wonderful things about her teaching style, how she's involved with the students, with the deaf community, going to different deaf events like Deaf Pizza, Deaf Starbucks. She would go there to encourage the students to communicate with the deaf community and ask them to learn more about our community. She was very involved with the deaf community itself and our friends. She was always an advocate. I've never heard any negative things regarding her as a teacher, as a freelance interpreter. She's been a huge support for the deaf and hard of hearing. We never asked her to support us. It was within her heart to be compassionate to our community. Her knowledge was immense, and we could never understand why she was let go. I created a petition on change.org for a diverse group of people, deaf community, people who are aware of the deaf community, interpreters, agencies, instructors, ASL instructors, etc., for NorCal, DACARA, the Napa Valley College staff as well. And I didn't get any response in regards to my requests of Napa. I had sent several emails and as well as telephone calls. We have, DACARA and our community have not received any responses to our requests. And I wanted to discuss, one moment, please. I wanted to discuss the response about hiring unethical ASL instructors. And the reason why I had made the petition was to inform the community and the college staff regarding best practice, as well as interpreters as well. Kylie Kirkpatrick filed a suit against me for defamation of character, and has told, basically, that feels that it's wrong for, one moment please, is illegal to speak for or on behalf of a government agency or organization. She has stated that Napa is planning on filing a suit, Napa College that is, against me. I believe that this is extortion, which is why she filed a suit against me in June of 2016. She wants me to pay $50,000 for I can't pronounce that, horrible behavior and being bullied, and committing defamation of character and slander. The case is still ongoing, and I'll be attending court again in October of 2017. She wants me to remove that petition, and this is not something that I'm willing to do, and I wanted to let you be aware of that. Because this does apply to the deaf and hard of hearing community as well as the college itself, I have to continue this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Water.
Hi there. Last Sunday, I was out and about, and I ran into Michael Baldini, and it occurred to me I hadn't been down here in a while to give you all a hard time, and so here I am. I'm actually here this time to thank you for something. My son graduated from Napa Valley College in 2013. He was remember that glorious year of Occupy Napa Valley College? That was my son. He was a bit of a rebel, an underachieving student in high school, big reader though. And he came here and did well, was accepted at several, very good universities, chose UC Santa Cruz, from which he graduated summa in 2015. He also won several history prizes. Went on to get a Master's of Art in Education, a secondary teaching credential, and he is teaching history down the coast today. And thank you so much, Napa Valley College. He really found himself here, and it wasn't just, it was certainly a team effort. You have a Ms. Yanover in the English department who grabbed him, metaphorically speaking, by the scruff of his neck and made him shape up his writing skills. And you have a lot of good teachers, in particular 3 very inspirational teachers. Ms. Badgett, art history, he adored that class, just loved that class, and she influenced him, continues to influence him. Mr. McGowan, the history teacher, my son just loved history. And Goki in philosophy. I believe he took her class the first semester, and he had not been in school for except for taking a Black history class at City College of San Francisco, where he got an A. That was about it for school for 9 years, and he came back from this philosophy class and just was all agog, couldn't stop talking about it. So thanks a lot. I've come down and mentioned in the past former students of mine from Napa High School who've come here and done well, and you all should be proud of yourselves, because this college is so important to Napa Valley. Many of my students just don't have a lot of money. In fact, most parents, the way four-year colleges have become so expensive, Napa Valley College is really a necessity. And you have enabled so many students to enter the middle class, frankly. You know, they've come from very modest circumstances, and they've gone on to do great things. And I don't think enough people hear about it. And I know that, I do know, actually, this gentleman here has written a couple of columns about former students who've done well. I remember reading one, Doug, Mr. Ernst. But I think you do need to celebrate yourselves more. I mean, everybody from the very famous Marissa Castaneda, former student of mine, now finished a graduate degree at Harvard. But there are many more stories. I meet people in the winemaking community who have started businesses thanks to your viticulture courses here. So there's just, everybody has a different story. And I just really want to thank you for all the great work you do. All right, I know I have come down here and occasionally been critical, and I was thinking maybe it's like past time for me to come down with a heartfelt thank you for what you've done, certainly for my family and also for my students. So keep it up. And you've got great teachers here.
Thank you for sharing that. Are there other members in the public that would like to speak for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. We're down to item 8, constituent group reports, 8.1, Amanda Badgett, Academic Senate.
Good evening, board. And thank you, Cindy Waters. That was lovely. Tonight, I want to say a few words regarding what the Senate has actually undertaken this fall. And you may have heard about it. We are entering into a 2-year pilot regarding committee restructuring. And this came at the recommendation of the IEPI team, who came and visited us first in November and then in February. And based on those meetings, we heard the following from this team composed of administrators and faculty: simplify, engage, communicate, integrate. So the Academic Senate took this to heart, and we formed a work group of our Senate exec. And we decided to take those objectives and apply it to the way we do business on this campus. So we have reduced the number of our committees from 10 to 5, and they are the Faculty Business Committee, Student Success Standards, Planning and Budget Joint Committee, Curriculum, and Faculty Coach, which were pre-existing. The intention here is to get all the right people in the room: faculty, classified, administrators, who together can shape and drive the revision of policy and regulation. In the previous iteration, one policy would kind of float around 3 or 4 committees and it'd go over here. And so we have endeavored to kind of condense for the sake of efficiency. Each committee is divided into work groups that tackle a discrete task, a particular policy or process. Small groups are more efficient, they're more nimble, and they bring a work product back to the parent committee. From there, that work product gets distributed among the classified Senate, administrative Senate, and division reps that take that to the various academic divisions. So essentially, what we're trying to do is engage our constituents and all constituents on this campus with the work that we do. And in that effort, we are also trying to develop more efficient meetings. Each of these committees is hoping, perhaps, and some have already, tagged somebody to be parliamentarian, keep them on task, as well as a kind of shadow or chair in training, so that those of us who reach the end of our tenure and our leadership can step down and hand it very gladly and confidently to the next group. So as with any pilot, there are going to be glitches and unforeseen problems, and it is early days. But I'm gratified to work with colleagues who are willing to do something different. And that's what we heard from that IEPI team back in November of last year. I want to give a special thanks to Faye Smiley, Shauna Bynum, Michael Gianvecchio, and, though not here right now, the VPI, Eric Shearer, for supporting us on the administrative side. Thank you.
Thank you. 8.2, Administrative Confidential Senate Report, Ken Arnold.
Good evening. The semester is up and going, and we are at the Council of Presidents also trying to help support the change in committees, and we appreciate the smaller structure of committees as well. Other than having our ongoing meetings, the couple things that we will be doing on October 20th, we're going to do a winery afternoon, so if you happen to be around and want to just stop by for social, it's about 3:30 to 5, and we're just sort of having just an administrative little breather there for us at the, and then we'll also have suitable, I can never remember what Robin calls it, but suitable non-alcoholic beverages are also available on the 20th that night. Other than that, just regular stuff going on.
Thank you. 8.3, Associated Students of Napa Valley College, and Rafael Manzel.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. So the ASNVC successfully hosted their first fireside chat event in August. As previously reported, the theme for the August event was LGBTQ plus dialogues, and the panel of speakers was comprised of discipline experts and service providers, 2 of them from on campus and 2 from local organizations. Due to some further planning, the September fireside chat has been postponed to October 10th. So from 6 to 8:30 p.m., same time, in the Performing Arts Center here on campus. In essence, there will be no fireside chat in September, rather just one in October next. And then we will continue to plan for a November fireside chat event as well. The theme for the now October fireside chat is mental health dialogues. And so we're talking to local groups like, of course, Mentis and Aldea, as well as our Director of Student Health Services here on campus, Nancy Tamarisk. Constitution Day is this Sunday. Our Senator of Inclusivity, Brandon Gamoras, held a small table event in front of the library, engaging students this morning, handing out pocket-sized copies of the U.S. Constitution, as well as resources for DACA students. We want to keep that going on as well. And I know I'm having my constituents look over all of the BPs and ARs that are due soon for Council of Presidents, of course, doing our duty as shared governance. And I lastly just want to say that it is Suicide Prevention Week, and so I just want to encourage us all to please check in with people that you care about, people that you are concerned about, and generally just be very open to anyone that you interact with, and just ask if you can, how are you doing? Sometimes we have really good coping mechanisms, so we are able to mask what we are truly struggling with. So please just be open, remain open, and because taking a minute can really save a life, and really every day is the right day to do that sort of thing, to check in with people. But I do think that commemorative months and heritage months, national commemorative months are a good thing. I think it's good to get the entire nation or the entire world on the same page for something good. So yes, and I'm a strong advocate for this and for mental health related causes and such. So we're really looking forward to, again, that fireside chat in October 10th. And yeah, that's my report. Thank you.
Raphael, see what I keep in my purse?
Looks like a very tattered, very used, looked over and probably highlighted pocket constitution. Oh, and thank you, Trustee Baker, for sending me that invitation via email for another LGBTQ plus related event that's coming up in a week or two, right? Downtown at the district building here in Napa. Thank you.
Thank you. 8.4, Classified Association Report, Jan Schart. Not here. 8.5, Classified Senate Report, Michael Rayford.
He stepped out for just a moment.
I thought I saw him.
Yeah, he just said, I'll be right back.
Let's
He'll be back.
flip it around. At 8.6, Faculty Association Report, Christy Wamoto.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be back with you again. I was unfortunately out of town for some meetings over the summer. I was in Boston, actually, and I was representing our California's Teachers Association in Boston for a week-long representative assembly that we had with our National Education Association. We are back, and faculty is refreshed, most of us. We are optimistic about the coming year. We were really excited. We had our first General Association meeting this afternoon, and we were able to welcome some of our new faculty, and we've been really excited to welcome all new full and part-time faculty to the fold. And we actually are going to be having our first meeting between the district and faculty association negotiators next week. So not a lot to report yet because we haven't had our meeting yet, but we're looking forward to it. And we are just hoping for the greatest things to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And no Michael yet. So we're going to move on. Number 9, Superintendent President Report. Dr. Kraft?
Yeah, thank you. And when Michael comes back, we can jump back to that if that's okay. A couple things. I've submitted a report. A couple pieces on my report that I'd like to just draw our attention to. Unless you've been in a total vacuum, you will have heard something in terms of DACA and the recent kind of swirl of activity around that. I've reported that here in my comments tonight. Also, I've posted our statement on our college position, which we released to the the community and the stakeholders here, which basically reaffirm the safety and security of our students on campus and let them know that we're here for them. I'm also gratified that the Board of Trustees, in a few months past, also made that same kind of commitment. The Chancellor's office is pretty lit up, I think, with this kind of information. And as we all heard a bit, it looks like there may be some pending legislation coming out of D.C., which is hopeful. So who knows how it goes. The bottom line for us is that we are here for our DACA students. They are a significant and very important part of our future here, and we're committed to supporting them. A little different here. Where it says state, the Accrediting Commission for ACCJC, for community colleges, has had 2 work groups working on accreditation for the past couple years. One of those significant charges of Work Group 2, to which I belong, along with other CEOs, about 40 of us, was to pursue a long-range model to structure for regional accreditation that aligns with the segments of higher education in the Western region. What that really means is California is fairly unique in having a 2-tiered system of an ACCJC for the community colleges and a WASC senior, if you will, for the universities. Overwhelmingly, the CEOs in Work Group 2 and generally across the board in California, this will come forward pretty soon, have endorsed the concept to move to a single accreditor in California, which would be WASC Senior. And that would take place over the next decade as accreditation rolls into view for each college. As you know, it does not affect us. We just completed our last review, did well with ACCJC. We have a mid-year report in 19 that's moving forward. So nothing will change for us for years to come, but you will see some updated information on this moving forward. It's not a given yet. It has to be adopted. And the reason I'm bringing it up here, it's the board's decision. It is a local decision that with high consultation between faculty senates, the administrative group, the students, and the board. So all those will be taken into consideration in the future when that comes to us. But don't hold your breath. It's a ways out, but it's good to just kind of be aware. Let's see. Silverado baseball is on the way. We signed a letter of intent with the Napa Silverados Baseball Club to move forward with their planning so far to field a team that would be a professional team that would utilize our field. So it's basically a long-term facilities enhancement and lease, if you will. More coming on that, but you'll see different pieces, and we'll probably have them back in here to present through the lens of our local baseball team here at the college, and also with some community folks to talk about the next steps for that. That again won't happen until next summer, so it's just kind of a long-range plan. And finally, there's a little blurb here on South Valley Campus. We've been talking about South Valley Campus, which is American Canyon High School. Just a couple things on it. We are now, Student Affairs has done a really wonderful job, and they have a team counseling staff that is assigned. There's testing and assessment are now conducted on site down there. And then we have classroom instruction that covers sections in non-credit ESL, credit classes in humanities, math, and sociology. So, and we expect that to be an emerging center and one that will be popular to relieve the traffic congestion up here and also to serve our American Canyon folks. Just a reminder, we have, I believe, Napa Valley Board of Trustees videos, including as tonight's operating. Yeah. So you can go to those videos. You should be able to scroll to a particular portion and see your smiley face and watch the action. Also, I would encourage us all, since we're now doing videos, to speak directly into the mic, because when you turn your voice like this and talk like that, Absolutely nothing is coming through on this right now. So it's important to remind us all to do that. So that was my public service announcement, Cynthia. Thank you. With that, I would like to call on Ginny Humphreys. She is the Vice President of the Napa Valley College Foundation to report. Welcome, Ginny.
Can I ask a clarifying question about this report first? Really quick?
Sure.
I was just wondering
Sorry,
about, thank you for getting the videos up and running. I guess there's 3 months that are up
There are.
at this point.
Yeah, I think it's 3 months. Yeah.
So that's great, thank you. I was just wondering, absent that we were doing the audio recordings on Napa Broadcasting, and now that we have these videos up and posted on our own site, is there a plan to discontinue that, or
I think
what's
we
the
had
status on
agreed that we
that?
would do a redundancy for a bit. I'm not complete, that's why I asked the question. I'm not completely satisfied that the video solution is one that we can count on yet. So we're going to do a redundant for at least another 3 or 4 months here and make sure that we're in good shape, and then we can retool that. Yes, yes. There's a huge demand for streaming of this video. People are clamoring. But, so Ginny, thank you.
Okay, good evening. I'll try to talk into the microphone. On the board, one of our priorities for this upcoming year is to expand the number of board members that we have. And we would like to invite any members of the board to nominate candidates. If you have someone in mind, I think the best way is to get in touch with our new executive director, Ann Branch. I introduced Ann Branch to you last month, and she unfortunately can't be here tonight, but she would be the best one to contact with any candidates that you might have. We are seriously looking for new people. Overall, Ann has been working very hard since she joined us in July. She's working on our strategic development plan, and we understand that you are as well. And we want you to know that we will work with you in any areas that will be mutual beneficial as both of these endeavors go forward. Secondly, our capital plan is also being worked on, and we submitted a $30,000 letter of request to the Gasser Foundation for the planning and sustainability of our capital plan, which is the VWT, the viticulture and wine technology. Ron's shaking his head. I did it right this time. Anyway, we should hear back in November whether we can get some money from the Gasser Foundation. And thirdly and lastly, not only is it your 75th anniversary, but it is our 50th anniversary. And we are going to have some sort of celebration, not sure yet. But Ann is working with Scott Allen to create a 50th anniversary logo for us. And just as a matter of interest, we now have about $8.6 million in our account. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Ginny. We can move to public information if you're okay, Doug? Oh, Michael is back. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, that would be the chair.
Okay, well, let's interrupt this for a minute and go back to 8.5 to the classified Senate report. Michael Rayford.
Okay, my name's Michael Rayford, and at our last classified meeting, we had did a pizza and salad celebration at the what was it called? Anyway, we did a report and we made $500 off of it, and now we're working on doing a Halloween costume contest, and that's about it.
Thank you. Dr. Kraft.
Thank you. And I would say that the Classifieds Halloween contest is the highlight of October. So we're looking forward to that.
I also want to say that we're going to be working with the ASMDC.
That's true. So let me amend my remarks. The classified and associated students of Napa Valley College Halloween event is unbelievable. So, Doug, are you ready? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Board, for having me up here again. The monthly clipping service is just full of positive news. I just encourage you to take a look at it, especially the article that appeared in the Register about the history of Napa Valley College, 75 years. It quoted everybody that has something important to say about the college. It was just an outstanding article, and I want to thank the Register for that. But more than that, I'd really like to encourage you to talk to your constituents. You're on the front lines, you board members, and they come up to you maybe sometimes with, hey, the college ought to write about, or I'm curious about this, or I've got a story idea. Sort of like what Cindy just gave about 5 story ideas, and Marianne gave me a story idea today. Your constituents can give that to you also, and if there's a way I can encourage you to go onto the OIA page, there's now a public information officer button to push. It's called News. You push it, you get a little click here, and there's a form to fill out if you have a story idea. You tell me your story idea, you tell me your name and phone number, and we call you and we do a story, or at least we look into it. So encourage your constituents to call me and get your stories out there, because I really think that the community and the college can make a strong bond together.
Board Chair, just want to make a comment. It's not in this report, but I just wanted to say that I appreciate the new newsletter that's going out to the staff that you're putting together.
Wow, the campus bulletin.
Campus Bulletin, I appreciate the efforts to communicate more with the college constituents.
The people here at the college are very, very cooperative. They submitted their stories, and they're just great. So thank you to the staff for that.
Thank you, Doug. Let's move to cabinet reports, and maybe I'll start with Bob, and you may have some intros as well. Yeah.
So if you'll bear with me, I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce the 2 newest members of the Administrative Services family here at Napa Valley College. You hired them at the August board meeting. They showed up for work last week, and they keep coming back. So we're very excited about that. So Eric and Joe, could you join me up here? So our first victim is Eric Hauk. He is our new Director of Institutional Technology. Eric holds a Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science from Seattle Pacific University and a Master of Science in Management and Leadership from Western Governors University. He has spent the last 10 years, it is 10 years, right, working at College of the Siskiyous up in Weed, and his that's not funny, and his just a little bit, yeah. His last position at College of the Siskiyous was Interim Director of Information Technology. And so I'd invite Eric to say a few words about how wonderful it is to be a member of the Administrative Services family here at Napa Valley College.
That was quite the lead, I'm sure. I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to be here at Napa Valley College. I'm thankful for many things, one of which is not having to spell Siskiyous on my email address anymore. But no, it's been a really warm welcome from everyone I've talked to here. Everyone I've met is very eager and excited to see me and to see a director in IT, which is then usually followed by a request for something. But that's not to be unexpected, and I'm just really glad to get my feet on the ground and have already begun meeting a lot of the staff and faculty, and have been invited to participate in many gatherings and committees, et cetera. And so it's been really nice to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity.
I feel like we should clap.
I would also like to point out that Joe is now the junior because he started one day after me. So I am not the newest employee here at Napa Valley as well. So.
That's right. Eric was only the new guy for one day, so we couldn't pick on him for very long. Joe, however, all bets are off. But so Joe Latunsky, who is a CPA, holds a Bachelor of Arts in Accounting from Michigan State University and a Master in Business Administration from Saginaw Valley State University, also in Michigan. He spent about 5 years working in public accounting, where he audited K-12 districts in Michigan. He also spent some years as a financial analyst at Next Tier Automotive, also in Michigan, where he implemented or worked on implementing a new health benefits payroll system and employee retirement plans system. And most recently, he has been an accounting manager at SciArt Industries just across the street from us. So we're very happy to have Joe with us, and hopefully Joe will have as many nice things to say about Napa Valley College as Eric did. So.
Thank you, and thank you, Board. I greatly appreciate how quickly everybody acted. Honestly, last month it was a blessing. The day after, I believe I interviewed, I had already been approved, and that is very rewarding. I'm excited for the opportunity. I have met nothing but great people so far, and like Eric had said, it's usually initial excitement with a lot of requests. So, and what Eric had mentioned previously isn't entirely true. He was not here a day. He was present a day earlier, but we both started on the same day. So, technically speaking, we're equals. But no, I'm truly blessed. My family and I moved here a couple years ago to Napa. I followed my wife. She is an assistant professor at Touro University. She's a physician. And I took my time finding work because it wasn't as immediately necessary. And we call Napa home. We love Napa Valley. We try to be as active in the community as we possibly can. I know I sit on the board for COPE. I'm a very active member there, and my wife as active as she can be, but we really enjoy the people and the community, and I'm excited to hit the ground running here at Napa Valley College. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for the opportunity to introduce Eric as our new Director of Institutional Technology and Joe as our new Controller. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, I think you just got audited too there. It was like wham, wham. Charo, thank you.
Good evening. We began our classification compensation study for the classified administrators and confidential group. The vendor, EMS, Educational Management Systems, is the vendor that you all approved on June the 22nd at that board meeting. They visited our campus during the week of August the 22nd and met with representatives from respective job families in employee information sessions to gain information about particular details regarding individuals' job descriptions, which is a part of the process. They'll return back to our campus on October the 3rd and 4th to meet with supervisors to review that information. We've also kicked off open enrollment. Open enrollment is a period of time for all employees who are eligible for our health benefits to review their options and sign up for other options. We had an open enrollment fair yesterday, September the 13th, and it was well attended. Our open enrollment period will be from September the 11th through October the 6th. Also, I mentioned this before, I'd like to mention it again, we will hold an internal job fair, Napa Valley College Job Fair, with the hopes of attracting talented individuals who are interested in teaching for us, both on a part-time basis as well as full-time basis, as well as our classified positions and administrative positions. This job fair will be held on December the 1st in the community room. Right now, we are tentatively having the schedule from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. I encourage all volunteers, we're looking for volunteers, but more importantly, if you know individuals, talented individuals who have a passion for education, encourage them to attend this job fair. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Oscar, VP. Oscar, I'm not sure that's on. Is it on? Yeah.
I'm sorry, there you go.
Thank you.
There are a couple of things that I would like to highlight, and that is thanks to Michelle Mano. Last month, I was able to take a tour of two agencies that our college works with very closely to assist our developmentally disabled students. That one of them is Napa Valley Support Services and PSI. And I was very impressed by the workings of these agencies. And I was also very impressed in the communication and the networking that we have with Napa Valley College and them. So I want to thank Michelle for the opportunity. Also, this is the start of the season for Napa College bringing on to campus college reps. We have UC Davis, Berkeley, and a host of other colleges, reps that will be assisting our students with guiding them in learning what they need to transfer to the respective schools. It's also the start of the season where the college, through Student Affairs, starts to visit other campuses, other high schools. We've been invited to at least 2 or 3 college fairs and family nights that we'll be attending. And also, it's a season where local schools ask us for a tour of our campus. So on the 29th, we're going to have New Tech High School with 40 students. And in general, Student Affairs is off to a good start. Another big highlight is that last week we had our transfer fair, where over 50 colleges and universities were present. We had several schools who were here from our local area who transported their students here, so we had a very, very nice crowd. The weather was a bit damp, I guess, but that did not dampen the spirits of the students and the reps. And also, with reference to DACA, the craft, we are currently scheduling for the 23rd of this month, which is next Saturday, a DACA session where students can renew their application, because with the current thing that stands, they have to renew their applications by October the 1st. Right. So we're hosting that on the 23rd in the Student Activities Room Center from 9 to 2 o'clock. And lastly, there's I believe that Sally Nichols and Jim McGowan were here with you about 3 months ago or so, that shared a bit about a very historical event that's taking place here at Napa Valley College, or through Napa Valley College, and that is that the Smithsonian Institute in Washington has this traveling exhibit of the Bracero program, which is also it's celebrating its 70th year of existence. And it's a guest worker program that was established between the governments of Mexico and the United States, and it's something that actually truly brought a great amount of richness to this county in particular, because many of the Braceros worked here in Napa County. And so Napa County is the host of the last leg or the last showing of the exhibit, and we are partnering with the Napa Valley Museum, which is located in Yountville. And so it's going to be here through November the 12th. So I encourage everyone to please take a look at it. There's a section there within the exhibit that pertains specifically to the Napa County Braceros and the contributions of those individuals here. And on October the 1st, there's activity that's being sponsored through Napa College. I'm sure that I didn't bring in enough for everyone, but it's activity. It's a presentation at the museum October the 1st, where we will be celebrating the local, I guess, the relatives or grandchildren, the relatives of those who are still here, of Braceros who once worked here and are currently living. We have counted 6. They're all in their 90s. And this is a very special event. And that's October the 1st at the museum from 1 to 4 o'clock, or I think 1 to 5 o'clock. So again, I encourage you, it's free, to please stop by and acknowledge or see the history of this, that this county has as a result of the workmanship of braceros from 75 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Yeah, I plan on being there. And 1 p.m., right, Sunday?
Yes, 1 to 5.
Wonderful.
On the 1st of
And you
October.
said on October 1st as, what's the student center? What's the date for the
That's
students?
The 23rd.
23rd.
That's next Saturday.
Thank you.
23rd.
Good. We'll make sure that that gets out as well again, and probably already is. That is my report.
Thank you.
Pull this one that we had a conversation about.
What date?
These minutes.
All right, we're down to item 10, approval of minutes. 10.1 is being pulled off the agenda. We'll move on to 10.2, minutes of the August 10th, 17th regular meeting. Is there any comment or question about the minutes?
You're not going to pull both of them to be proofread?
No, I believe that, I think, we had the draft minutes for 7:13 were the ones we had in question, and we found some errors on those, so we're going to work on those. But I believe the minutes in 10.2, the 8:10 meeting, 07 are okay.
Can I just look at them for a second? Because
Excuse me.
They aren't something that we can approve just with the amendments or with the corrections?
The 7:13 was a rough draft that we released.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Okay, so then I just want to make a correction on, if we're going to approve the August ones, then item 10, information discussion items, I just want to make a correction, Ronald Kraft instead of Robert Kraft.
My twin. Thank you.
Anything else?
I'm not sure about anything else. Yeah, so I'm fine with the rest.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll second.
I'll move for
It's been-
approval with the correction from Robert to Ronald Kraft.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, please say yes.
Aye.
Abstain, I was not here. Okay, item 11, information discussion items. 11.1, campus housing. And I note that we do have a card for a speaker, Esperanza Padilla.
Hello. Well, thank you for saying my name. I guess I don't have to introduce myself. Okay. Well, yeah, I will. I'm Esperanza Padilla, so I'm not the doppelganger. And basically, I'm here to voice my support for the campus here, the campus housing here at NVC, because I think as a student it's important I share my views on that, because I get an inside perspective into how the region's housing affects the students here currently, or even prospective students in the future. So I'm in support of the campus housing project for a number of reasons. Firstly, I want to say it's because I can see how it can provide accommodations that students need to pursue their higher education that they need in order to acquire a career. This is especially helpful for students that just so happen to have an additional responsibility, like say being a mother or a father, and who have to go to school part-time, work part-time, and be a full-time parent as well. Secondly, I think it would highly benefit students who live outside, commuting bounds, who would like to go to NVC, but just they can't afford to commute here back and forth from wherever they live. And running up to that, thirdly, I would like to say that I think this would especially help students that are financially insecure based upon, my own troubles at attending school. And I think it would help students that have a consistent financial insecurity that stems from their own housing insecurity or a lack of housing, I should say, and this is California. And of course, applying to that would also be veterans who also have had trouble with, consistent financial security with their adjustments back in civilian life. Lastly, I just want to conclude just with the potential benefits with this as well that campus housing could provide in the future for NVC as well, because campus housing will essentially prove to benefit the school itself and the community at large, because it would provide these students the opportunity and to pursue their higher education and get the training they need for a job, which will then, of course, come back and benefit NBC as well, because, either by just the merit of it, from the word of mouth, this would help influence the campus's image, or it could, help as in they'll want to come back and work here, or maybe work in the community as well. So in that way, it's not just a charity case. You are going to, get some benefit from this as well as a college. So that's basically what I want to conclude here, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Board Chair, when was the support document uploaded? Because I prepared for this meeting yesterday and today, and I didn't see a document there.
I don't know. Today? Do you know?
Do you know what time it was posted today?
I don't.
Okay, so I move that we postpone discussion of this item until we can review the document and the public can review the documents.
What is the document?
It would be I think this is the presentation by the informational presentation by
So I move to postpone until we can review the document and the public can review the document, because I don't see how we can have an enlightened discussion when we haven't reviewed the document, and the public's been deprived of the opportunity to review it and comment as well.
Mr. Chair, isn't it a presentation?
It's a presentation is what I was going to say. This is their presentation they're bringing to us right now.
Right, but there might have been people, had they known that that was going to be presented, who might have wanted to come. I specifically know, for example, Mr. Orton, who's been diligent in following this topic and coming and commenting, didn't come tonight specifically because he thought nothing specific was going to be presented. So, it's depriving the public with the opportunity to comment, but also we haven't read it and couldn't do our own research as well. So, anyway,
You've made a motion.
I move to postpone this discussion.
Is there a second on the motion? There is no second, so the motion dies. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Campus housing is has been ongoing and kind of a thoughtful process for the past couple years. Tonight, we've asked Balfour Beatty, and they're the recommended selected finalists through our process, to present their qualifications. This is from our description, and their qualifications and ideas based on the RFQ, and they're here to answer some questions tonight as well. They're part of again, I'm going to say, slow and prudent process that we are trying to unpack a little bit. Bob, I don't know if you want to add more in here in terms of the process, in terms of what we went through.
Well, so we first issued the RFQ a number of months ago, and we sent the RFQ to a group of project managers and potential developers based on research that we had done on campus housing throughout the country. Interestingly enough, Balfour Beatty was not one of those organizations, but rather a partner that they have worked with locally was one of those organizations. And so we then held an information session, had a number of groups come to learn more about the college, learn more about the project. Balfour Beatty was one of those groups that came. And we received 3 responses, formal responses to the RFQ. We interviewed all 3 of those potential project managers, and the staff is recommending that we work with Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions.
Thank you. And I could add that after our interviews, which were, thank you so much, you did obviously a good job, or you wouldn't be here tonight, and we'll introduce you. The staff met with the ad hoc subcommittee to present our reflections and go over our kind of recommendations, and there were questions and answers in that session as well. Tonight, maybe you self-introduce, and that would be helpful for us.
Sure.
And very happy that you're here. Welcome.
Great. Well, thank you, members of the board, Dr. Kraft, Mr. Parker, and members of the Napa Valley College community. We're very excited to be here today. I'm Josh Smith, Senior Vice President with Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions. My colleague, Sam Jung, Vice President with Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions, is also here with me today. We're very excited to be here. You know, this is a very transformational opportunity for this campus to become a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week, living, breathing campus. It's something that a number of community colleges across the country are looking at doing. And we're here today simply to talk about our firm, who we are, and give a little bit of glimpse into process. And as Dr. Kraft mentioned, it is a process to explore. We want to spend a lot of time with the board, with faculty and staff, with the students, and really make sure that this is the right opportunity for this campus. Again, it's something that as was it Esmeralda? Esperanza, I'm sorry, yes, said, you know, there's a lot of proven research about the benefits of on-campus living, but it doesn't make sense for every campus. So I'm not here today to convince you to build student housing. I'm here simply to say that it's an option. So with that being said, Balfour Beatty is a global organization. We're publicly traded on the London Stock Exchange. Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions is a part of Balfour Beatty Investments. We specialize in public-private partnerships nationally. We're one of the largest owner-operators of on-base military housing in the U.S. The group that I represent, Campus Solutions, we specialize in campus projects. So whether it's student housing, academic buildings, recreation and sports, et cetera, we really specialize in mission-driven partnerships. So we don't build or own off-campus. All of our campus projects are purely on-campus in partnership with a university. We're a fully integrated firm. As Mr. Parker mentioned, we are offering to partner locally with Brown Construction and Mogavera Architects out of Sacramento, who we have experience with, and they have experience together before. Balfour Beatty Communities, as I was talking about, is obviously one of the largest owner-operators in the U.S. We have about 50,000 units nationally, which includes 120,000 beds, 2,000 units operated in California. We're very flexible in the way that we structure our partnerships, a number of different financing type solutions, including one that was in the RFQ, as well as a number of other options. And if we're able to move forward, you know, we would look forward to sitting down with the board and others as you see fit to go through those options and talk a little bit more about what each brings to the table. Just a little glimpse into some of the projects that we've delivered nationally. We've built from coast to coast, community colleges to four-year universities. We've done graduate, faculty, staff housing, undergraduate, and every type of living arrangement. I'll let Sam here talk here in a second, but each one is very unique. You know, there's really not a one-size-fit-all approach. And it's really important that you get it right at the start. And so, you know, doing our due diligence and, again, having a very integrated approach, very collaborative approach with the board and the local community. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Sam.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about us and a little bit about public-private partnerships for on-campus housing. I actually personally come from the I would say development manager, P3 advisor background. I actually used to advise higher education clients in this process on the other side. Josh actually brought me on because he actually hated negotiating against me. So, but we have a little bit of history there. But you know, I say that because what's in front of you is a little bit of a complicated chart. It's what we call a spaghetti chart talking about what the partnership may look like. This is one structure that we can consider in partnership, but there are obviously a whole host of other partnerships we can look at as well. Because we are 100% focused on campus partnerships, we are completely agnostic to how you guys want to tailor the partnership moving forward. But just a quick summary, the tax-exempt financing structure is one that was outlined in the RFQ. We think that it's a great structure for public-private partnerships in community colleges. When I work with public two-year institutions across the country, this is actually the most preferred structure, primarily because it provides you with the lowest borrowing cost of capital, which obviously helps with student affordability. And the benefit of this structure is that the university or the college actually receives all of the cash flows of the project. So we, as Balfour Beatty, really don't have any upside in the transaction. We provide we essentially act as a fee developer in this scenario, as a kind of a program manager type role. And the ongoing relationship and the partnership is really around our management services related to the student life aspects, to facilities management and operations. But as I mentioned, we have no upside in this kind of a transaction. All of the money goes back to the institution for the betterment of the institution, for opportunities such as advancing affordability initiatives that are very important for two-year institutions. Just a quick summary, as Josh mentioned, when we did submit this our proposal, we did partner with two local firms, Brown Construction and Mogavera, both based out of Sacramento. They have extensive experience in higher education, student housing, and we certainly lean on them as local experts in the California student housing realm. As you probably saw in the previous slide, none of our housing looked the same, and that's done with intention. We really focus on delivering a student housing project that's of this place and that's reflective of the area that it's around. And so we would certainly focus on trying to deliver a project that represents Napa, with a lot of feedback from the students, the associate students, the cabinets, as well as the stakeholders in this room, because we certainly believe that stakeholder engagement and feedback are absolutely critical in making sure that this project is realized in the way that you have envisioned from day one. With that said, just a quick kind of trends in community colleges. This was actually surprising to me as we were doing research. 28% of community colleges across the country actually offer on-campus housing. It's certainly a growing trend, particularly among those with growing populations. So that's probably why you see states like Texas with a very dark blue. It's just the state has a very robust community college program and attracts a lot of students, not just from their local community, but around the region as well. Surprisingly enough, California does offer, there are a number of California community colleges that offer on-campus housing as well. There's approximately 11 currently that service in that capacity. So you might be curious as to why community colleges offer housing, and these are some bullets that we've collected over the years as we serviced community colleges across the country. And so one of the reasons why they go down this route is to really attract out-of-region and international students. I think as one of your students mentioned, sometimes the commute time is often too great, and so to provide housing that's close to campus is also a great reason for providing housing. But I'll caveat that it's also providing affordable housing. The third point here is actually an interesting one. When we engage with institutions, some of the drivers is really they're looking to diversify their revenue sources. As I mentioned, all of the cash flows of the project go back to the institution in this structure, and that surplus cash flow can service the institution in a variety of other ways that they may not have realized in a traditional manner. But I think most importantly, why offer on-campus housing, it's really about the student outcome. There are a number of studies out there that support the benefits of on-campus housing in terms of increased retention, persistence, and graduation, which are obviously very, very important in the community college world, particularly in the state of California, where students of community colleges have an opportunity to transfer to any of the four-year public institutions of their choice. And I think that really supports the last bullet that I have here in terms of on-campus housing does prepare a lot of community college residents. They do prepare them for their next step in their higher education journey, particularly as they transition into a four-year institution where they may not necessarily have had a similar student housing or student life experience. So that was actually an interesting benefit that we hear over and over again. But very quickly, in terms of a path forward, this is just a rough sketch of how we envision working together in partnership. Obviously, this is our first pass, something that we would love to work through with you if we are so lucky to have an opportunity to do that. But we just want to show you how we can work rapidly together and make decisions to move forward. But I think what I want to highlight is really the most important thing is really the 90 to 120 day period where we really work hard to identify feasibility for the project, not just in terms of what would make the project work, but in the context of what can your students afford and how do we back into a project that gets us there. And then secondly, what are your students looking for and what are your stakeholders looking for? I thought it was interesting, one of your students mentioned potentially the opportunity for married students or students with family. That was actually something that I never really thought of. A lot of these projects primarily focus on kind of traditionally aged students, but something that we want to definitely explore together as to how do we service that community as well. And so for us, it's that first 3 month to 4 month period really hammering in on those feasible concepts. Josh, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
So those that, we just wanted to kind of give an overview and happy to answer any questions from the group.
I have some.
Mary Ann?
So this is obviously very different from what any of us have any expertise with, so it seems very foreign, and I'm not quite grasping it. And I think that one of my questions is, so it talks about a 32 to 40-year lease. I hope the best for Balfour Beatty, but what if, in 20 years you guys decide to go out of business? What happens to that lease?
So just one clarification. So the tax-exempt project, the ground lease would be with a 501c3 nonprofit. And so that allows the project to be tax-exempt and allows for cash flows to go back to the college. So the nonprofit would actually be a process by which the college would interview. There's several groups across the country that act as a 501c3. So in that capacity, they are the owner of the project for the long term. So as Sam was mentioning, we are the developer, so we're responsible for budget and schedule risks, for entitlement risk, and delivery, and then we would operate the project upon delivery.
And where does your revenue come from?
So our revenue comes from a development fee that's paid at financial close. So we get a feasible project, we go through financing, we get the project designed and priced, and at financial close, we're paid a development fee. And then Balfour Beatty Communities, which is our sister company on the operations side, they would get an ongoing management fee and be responsible for services such as facilities maintenance, operations, residence life, billing, et cetera. And we're happy to, we've looked at a number of different structures with colleges that have shared services. So,
and then it also said on one of the slides, opportunity for purchase. How exactly does that work?
So under a tax-exempt structure, tax-exempt bonds are issued by a conduit in the 501c3. And, I'm sorry, I'm just going to raise that up a little bit so I'm not leaning down. So bonds are issued through the conduit 501c3. And so there's typically a lockout period, but at that point in time, you're basically paying par of the bonds, the remaining outstanding debt of the project, if you were ever to want to purchase.
Thank you.
Rosaura?
How are the management fees structured?
So they're based on revenue of the project. When we met with Dr. Kraft and Mr. Parker, we went through this in a little bit more detail, but our fees are incentivized, so we have key performance indicators as part of the project. So the student body as well as the administration rates us on how we're performing as an operator, and our fees are based on that.
Thank you.
Here.
During the PowerPoint, it's on the slide of a path forward. It said decision making in October. next month, are we deciding on student housing? Or was that just a rough sketch?
It would be a rough sketch. I mean, tonight is just informational.
Yeah, for next month.
We may bring it forward next month or the following month. Depends on
As
our
an action item?
on tonight's conversation and our conversations with them as
And
well.
there's still some steps, right, for
Yeah, we still have some
qualification,
steps, yes.
Right.
that
We have
haven't
a
taken
reference
place.
checking portion that's yet to unfold, a complete reference, and then we'll dig into more questions that you have tonight. So I'm sure that we're not going to be able to answer all these questions or anything that might do, and we'll forward those over and do those passes. If we move forward in a way that I think that meets everybody's criteria, then we'll bring it back to the board for action to enter in, or maybe an endorsement to enter into negotiations, which would be the next step.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
I have two questions. My first one is, can you tell us a little bit more about your process for determining interest and feasibility?
Yeah, one of the things that actually is a requirement for tax-exempt financing is what's called an independent market study. So it actually wouldn't be a market study that's conducted by Balfour Beatty. It would actually be a independent firm that has been qualified by bankers across the country to be truly independent, who are specialized in student housing. And we'll work with them to through the whole process of community engagement, where we conduct focus groups with key stakeholders as well as students. We also, as part of that process, hold a student survey to ensure that we can quantify the level of interest and splice that data to demographic groups that show the most interest. And through that process, what they also do is also look into the availability of rental housing in the local community as well, in all spectrums and all price points, to really understand what is available to students and what are they living in right now. And through that process, what ends up happening is a lot of these firms have their own proprietary demand modeling program. And through that is where they would come with a recommendation as to what is the projected demand for on-campus housing at Napa Valley College. And we'll work with them to identify what the unit types would be, at which price point, and things of that nature.
My second question is, we've had a lot of conversation amongst ourselves here at the board about independent oversight and how we would incorporate that, having a project manager or something of that nature that would kind of look out for the college but would not necessarily be connected with your group. Can you tell us a little bit about experiences that you've had like that working with other entities?
I actually used to play that role, so I can actually share a lot about that. I think they certainly do play a great role in the process in terms of sometimes I think the best role is staff augmentation. Oftentimes when institutions may not necessarily have the staff available or the time for the staff who may have the expertise available to participate in that kind of manner, we find that those are oftentimes the best opportunities to engage those folks. It's certainly, it depends on kind of which areas of expertise you're certainly looking at, whether it's on the finance side, it's on the construction delivery side. It really depends on where you find the gaps that you think may be necessary to ensure your voice is heard through the process.
Can I ask you to expand a little bit? I think that the key point, in terms of the on-point question, is Balfour Beatty as program manager protecting the interests of the district over the competing demands of what a construction firm might want, or how does that? Can you address that?
Sure. Actually, Josh, you might be actually much
Sure.
stronger.
So, at the end of the day, the project doesn't get built unless it's feasible. And, Balfour Beatty is not of the interest in building a project that's not feasible. We wouldn't be able to even get financing for a project that's not deemed feasible by a market study. And so that's kind of the first point. We are aligned with the college in that, we're not a equity investor in the sense of we're constantly trying to get an equity return year after year after year. We're here to provide a service on behalf of the college, which really is that development manager role. We visited with you in the interview and talked a little bit about the process that you guys have taken with other projects in bringing in a construction or project manager within your staff that helps to manage that. And so really a lot of colleges and universities choose this tax exempt structure because it does align the developer with the college and not necessarily with a profit center.
Mr. Baldini.
Thank you. I took a look on your projects recently delivered slide in University of Texas North Side. So I just took a look at the website for that. And I noticed retail because I can see awnings in your photograph. And looking at the retail, I see delicious bubble tea and Johnny John's, et cetera, et cetera. Tell me how those dovetail into the projects and how those possible revenue streams work, and whether that's desired or undesired. How do you come to those decisions?
Sure. So kind of the same way we survey students, we look at the retail market, and so it's something that when a college introduces housing for the first time, it does become that 24/7 atmosphere, and so when students are living here 7 days a week, they're going to need a place to eat. And so there's that simple piece of that. But as it relates to the revenues, et cetera, that come in, that all still goes back to benefiting the college. There are some limits to retail under this tax exempt structure, given it's a retail revenue with taxes in general. So there's typically a taxable bond tail that's issued as part of the overall project. So, but they're structured just like a typical retail lease that would be owned by a developer in town. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And then I would have to ask about the pool in Florida. How does that? How do you manage that with the liability?
It's very popular with some institutions. Safety is always the number one goal of many colleges and universities, and so. In most cases where there's a pool, it's operated by the private party and not the college and university, because most schools do not want to take the liability risk of that. But I will say that in student surveys, that's one of the top amenities, along with fitness centers, of what students are looking for. But as housing has transformed over time, we're doing a project at Purdue University, and there's no fitness center, there's no pool. All of the auxiliary space with the project is academically focused. We'll have a faculty in residence as well as an entrepreneur in residence. So again, Purdue's a very academically driven school, and so that's some concepts that might be important here at Napa Valley College is looking at ways to integrate faculty and staff within the residential living environment, so students do have constant access, and there's a little bit of college oversight in the project. So,
Kyle.
So my question is, so at the end of the lease, the 32 to 40 years, then what happens?
So, great question. So within the project structure, there are reserves set aside as part of the financing. So it's $1 per bed per year that's set aside so that you're not getting deferred maintenance over time of the project. Without having done design and construction feasibility yet of this, it's difficult to say in terms of whether it's going to be wood frame or steel, but the idea is that at the end of that 30-year ground lease, you're getting a project that's still going to have a life of 10, 20 years after that. So after that 30 years, it becomes property of Napa Valley College, and you all can keep operating it. You can tear it down. But the reserves are set aside so that if you do decide to start over, if you want to put an academic building in there or whatever, you're not left with the bag and the bill saying, what do we do with this? So,
is it generally a 32 to 40 year lease, or have you done shorter leases on them, or?
Traditionally, it's in the tax exempt bond world for this type of structure. It's the lease is actually coterminous with the debt, meaning whenever the debt is paid off, the lease expires. So, in the example of the question one of the trustees asked on paying off the debt early, let's say at year 11 you pay off the principal of the debt, then the ground lease expires and you guys own the facility. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's traditionally how it works. In some states, they do ask for shorter leases. In Texas, we've done them for 35 years. In most instances, it's usually up to 40 years because the investors like to see kind of a 10-year tail in the event that you may want to refinance the debt just to extend the ground lease. We don't want to leave you in a situation where the ground lease term expires, but you still have a considerable amount of debt to pay.
I think another thing too, we provided Mr. Parker and Dr. Kraft some additional documentation that it's probably more detailed than some people would want to read, but it is very important documents for you all to look at, and so if there is more information you want beyond that, we're absolutely happy to give that to you. Again, these projects have been done, hundreds of times across the country, but it's a very important to have a good understanding of that financing structure. So,
one more question.
I was just curious if you have any projects that you've done in California.
So within California, our investment and development experience relies on our military housing operations. So Vandenberg, Travis, and Beale are the three operations that we have in California. As Sam mentioned, we've partnered with Brown and Mogavero, and they have a lot of experience in California. And from our perspective, from the true development sense, in that delivering the project, dealing with local subcontractors and the market, you don't want to have anyone other than someone local. The construction market is booming nationally, and so it's important to partner with groups that have those relationships, both in the general region, but even all over the state and out of state, because as the market grows, it's important to be able to get people to the job to build it. And we were visiting with Brown Construction earlier today, and they made sure to remind us that they've never delivered late on a project. So that being said, it's an opportunity that we have experience with entitlements in California, and we have partners that have delivered student housing in California. But I will say every community college and university is very different in what they want to build. So we look forward to shaping a unique community for Napa Valley College. So.
Manveer?
I'll be quick. Thank you for the presentation. As a student, I'm excited about having student housing here. My question is, it might be too soon for this. What's the cost or range that would be a typical unit in this complex?
So probably too early to say. We've done some due diligence in the market, relying on market reports that we have, and what we found was a average of roughly $1,200 a bed a month was in the market. Now, that is a non-student driven market result. And so the important piece is not to study the overall Napa community, but study and do market analysis with the students that are going to be coming to Napa Valley College. And so affordability is key. And when Sam said, beginning with the end in mind, it's what can students afford to pay, and that will then dictate what is designed and built. So we're absolutely sensitive to the affordability component of this project and the student body.
Thank you.
And I'll also add that one thing that's also important in that process is not just looking at what's available in the immediate community, but also what are other institutions in the state, particularly those that your students transfer to, what are they charging as well? Because the last thing we want to do is overcharge them here and then they get a discount somewhere else. So we're very cognizant of that, and we'll definitely work towards making sure that that's in the forefront.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
One last question. This is just out of curiosity. Why the London Stock Exchange and not the New York Stock Exchange?
I'm sorry. What was the second piece? Why London and not?
You said you were listed on the
Yes.
London.
Yes.
New York. Oh, I'm sorry, London Stock Exchange. Why not the New York?
So Man, that is a great question. I wish I had a great answer for that. Balfour Beatty is a 100-year-old organization. They were formed and based in London. And so, I don't know, but that's a great question I'd like to ask of when I get back. So,
Thank
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. 11.2 Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Dr. Kraft?
Yes, thank you. Tonight, I'd like to welcome Bruce Wilson, who's Director of Napa Lake Workforce Board, and Bruce also has a presentation for us. Welcome, Bruce. It's been a while since you've been here. It's good to see you. Marianne Mancuso, Trustee Mancuso, is also very acquainted and serves as a board member.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Wilson. I'm the director, actually, of the new Workforce Alliance of the North Bay. And some of you might know that the Workforce Alliance of the North Bay is the regional workforce development board for Napa, Marin, Lake, and now Mendocino counties. So we're a regional workforce development board. I'd like to thank Mary Ann for inviting me out here and facilitating this conversation, and thank you for having me as well. So I'm here to talk about basically opportunities that I think we have to partner and come up with innovative solutions in the realm of economic development, workforce development, and education. And I think as we partner more and more in the next few years, I think we're going to take quantum leaps for our career seekers, our business community, as well as our students. I'm going to talk about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives that we have with the new Workforce Alliance in the North Bay. I think it's important, though, to sometimes go back in time and see where we've come from in order to have a clearer picture about where we're going. This presentation has a number of pictures in it. And so with that, let me take you way back in time to an early unemployment office. Workforce development has been a part of the national lexicon since the New Deal era programs of the 1920s. In the 1960s, we had the Manpower Development Act, Kennedy administration. In the 1970s, we had the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act, which, I'm getting a phone call. Let me, in the 1970s, we had the CETA programs, and in the 1980s, the CETA programs were more about putting people in employment in public sector jobs. So naturally, in the 1980s with the Reagan administration, we shifted out of that public sector employment and into more of a private sector driven workforce development system. So as we go through these decades, we're changing the way our national job training infrastructure is looking, and for good reason. So in the 1980s, we had the Private Industry Council that came online, and the Private Industry Council was a business-led private and public sector board. In the 1990s, we had the Workforce Investment Act, which brought on the career centers, what we know as one-stop centers, and now as American Job Centers. And now we have the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I just want to highlight two words in that act: innovation and opportunity. So these pictures, I get a kick out of. This is actually an unemployment line that Al Capone, as I understand it, had put together in Chicago. The long and the short of it is that if we don't take care of our unemployment, unemployment issues and our job training needs in our communities, then somebody is going to fill that vacuum. The National Job Training Infrastructure was designed to ensure that Americans were ready to work with marketable skills, and certainly my organization, the Workforce Alliance, we're a pipeline for that, but if we're going to get the marketable skills, we need to be partnering with organizations, educational systems such as yours. as we go through the years, it's important to have this job training infrastructure because there's always going to be someone or groups of people that are particularly hard hit by the twists and turns of the national economy. So with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the question is, what is the next big improvement in the system? And I would submit to you that we need to build on those public and private sector partnerships, but also if we're going to address the talent pipeline, not a single one of our organizations can do it alone. So in this particular slide, you can see the connections between our educational systems, our economic development systems, our workforce systems. I think that those communities that solve that talent pipeline are the communities that ultimately are going to come out ahead. Not just from a community standpoint, businesses all over the country are trying to solve that talent pipeline, and certainly we should be at the table as we do that. I certainly don't expect you to commit this graphic to memory. I only want to illustrate that while what we're doing is not brain surgery or rocket science, it's not necessarily easy work, what we do. And so we need to be patient with ourselves and in our partnerships as we move forward. The connections between industry and career pathways, and particularly these public-private sector partnerships illustrated by the top there, which I'll zoom in here, are very important. Over the last year, the Workforce Development Board has been putting together these industry sector partnerships, really investing into these demand-driven systems. A perfect example of an industry sector partnership is the Vintners Association. Imagine what happens when an industry comes together and speaks with one voice, how amplified that voice is. So that's what we are convening at the Workforce Development Board. We have the Hospitality Industry Partnership that has been running for several months now. We've launched with our sister county in Solano County, the Healthcare Industry Partnership, and we also have a Healthcare Industry Partnership in Napa and Marin, which we have recently launched. The long and short of it is we want to get the employers in the industry together at the same table as illustrated in this graphic, but not just having a facilitated discussion about what their needs are, not just from a workforce and education standpoint either. What are their needs? What are their barriers to productivity? We want to know all of those issues. And you can see at the edge of the table, if you will, the different community support partners that need to be there hearing what these industries are saying so that we can respond effectively to with regard to regulations or employment and training. This is the ground truthing that's necessary to support the data that we come up with when we put together our programs, not just at the workforce level, but in the community colleges as well. We're not inventing this process. This is something that different states have had a great deal of success with. Colorado being one of those states, Arizona is another state that has taken big steps with regard to industry sector partnerships. And what some of these folks are reporting out is that their productivity is going up. 41% reduction in turnover. 84% report significant increases in productivity as a result of programs that are built based on specific employer needs, and that's really what's important. Some of those programs are job training programs, and when those job training programs are responsive to the specific industry needs, you can see the outcomes for workers. 48% of the participants exited poverty from programs that came out of this type of dialogue, 18% with higher earnings. So there are wins on both sides of the coin with regard to industry sector partnerships. So again, we are doing that not only in our region, but specifically here in Napa County as well. And Diana has been very involved in this process, and several other folks coming to the table at these hospitality industry partnership meetings. We'd like to see that grow and grow and grow. Just a quick, this is not a surprise to anybody, the connection between education and employment. The higher education you have, the less unemployment you're going to have. The less education you have, the less earnings you're going to have, and the higher unemployment. So that's not a surprise to anybody. The long and the short of it, though, is that our research is showing that those with only a high school diploma or less stand little to no chance of making it into the middle class. They need to have post-secondary education, which again is a critically important role that the community colleges and the workforce boards and economic development boards can play together. Why we need to build more effectively on our partnerships. An initiative that I'm particularly proud of that we recently built, innovative. I would say it's built on a UK-based system that has a lot of market share, if you will, in the UK, and it's been spreading internationally. We modeled our system, Bright Futures, on it. Essentially, it's a Match.com for teachers in K through 16, and for anybody, including yourselves, that have a job. What we see is that young people that have experienced 5 or more connections with someone in work stand to make 18% more on average as young adults. Just 2 connections in their schooling shows that there's 20% less likely to be disengaged from education and training programs as they progress. And so why is that? Anybody read Malcolm Gladwell? Right? So opportunity, access to opportunity and understanding has a great deal to do with the decisions we make. So if we're arming our students, arming our young people with the labor market information and the context for jobs, they can better make decisions about what classes they're going to be sitting in and also have the passion to see those classes through. So that's part of the connection that we have here. So Bright Futures is something that I encourage you all to get involved in. It's very easy. We're asking for 1 hour of a volunteer's time, anybody that has work, that's willing to talk to a young person in a classroom setting, in a one-on-one setting, at a job fair. We heard a job fair come up. Get employers involved in the education system. It's pretty basic, and if you're a volunteer, you sign up with some basic information. If you're a teacher and you need a graphic design artist to talk to your class, you go to this system. That person will get pinged on their phone and be willing or not willing to come and talk to that class. I'm going to hand out, my staff printed out some reports. We have access to, I'll just pass that around and you can get a sense for what we have. We have access to a ton of information. We partner with economic modeling specialists, and I believe you do as well. But the long and the short of it is we can look at the data in a pretty effective way and look at the completions in a community. Anybody that completes a post-secondary program is what I'm talking about. So if we're looking at job growth and we see that there's a need for 100 welders in the area, but then we look at the graduates that are coming out of our community and we see that there's only 2 graduates, well, there's probably room to expand that program. So we're really looking at gaps. We can look at demographic data and see how old the workforce is to see if we're going to be having a problem in the next 5 to 10 years. So those kinds of decisions and this kind of data, I think, will go a long way in our partnerships as we go. What occupations require short-term or more training? We'd like to work with you on that because we're not in the business of actually the education system. We're the pipeline. We're trying to create a situation where our workers can go get more and more education. So these are just samples of different data points that we can get for you. We're investing heavily in career pathways. We are about to release a new career pathway network that is designed to lay out career ladders for occupations and all kinds of information about that particular occupation. This is fed by EMSI information. I'm very excited about this. particular innovative, I think, opportunity for our four-county area. So I look forward to working with your staff in this area. Finally, many of you know our one-stop centers. Now, this is the transactional part of what we do. We fund these one-stop centers. We put out about $3.5 million for one-stop centers in our 4 counties just this year. Right now, you know it as Workforce Napa. In Napa County, we have nonprofit organizations that run our centers in Lake and Mendocino. We are about to rebrand this one-stop center because, as the name suggests, we're getting more and more into the career investment. We're not just looking to connect people with jobs, we're looking to connect people into a career ladder, into a career that they can reasonably expect to move into higher and higher earnings with the additional skill sets that they get. So CareerPoint is about to be unleashed. You're kind of getting a sneak peek of our logo and where we're going. I'll leave you with this. I said earlier that it's difficult for someone to come out of high school and just jump into and have an opportunity to jump into the middle class. They need the additional post-secondary training. If you're going to be an auto mechanic, you're working on systems and complex systems, whether it's the braking system or not, that have higher and higher regulations. We need that training. The things that these folks are working on, as illustrated by this picture, are much more advanced than what we put men on the moon for in the 1960s. So we need that additional training, and I think we can partner together to make sure that we are finding out what the employers need, what our economy is actually requiring, and we can work together to get that training in our communities. And so I'll leave you with that. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Amy?
Mine's more for, I guess, Dr. Kraft. I'm wondering, are you already in discussion with this organization that some of these programs might be coming to the board for approval, or what's?
Yes, we are very much in discussion, and Bruce, and we're part of the process. Diana, as dean, and Michelle has been involved in this as well in her capacity. So I guess the best way to typify that is the college is deeply engaged in the process, and Bruce is here tonight to kind of whet your appetite for that. And so it wouldn't surprise any of us as we work closer together and those opportunities come to the board. Mary Ann may also have a more
if
informed.
I could, I'd like to just share one of our most successful stories, I think, is for both of us. I mean, our psychiatric technician program is really one of our shining stars. People walk out of that program with a job before they ever even get to graduation. And I know that there have been times when those candidates for that program to go into that program have come through this system and have gone full circle. And I think that what I heard a lot at our conference last week is capturing that data is really getting better and better all the time to be able to say this person walked into CareerPoint and ended up a graduate from the psychiatric technician program, and now they're earning X number of dollars. You know, it's like Cindy Waters said earlier. I love this quote. I'm going to quote it a lot. Allow people to enter the middle class. I mean, that's, I get excited about it, but that's just one of the best examples, I think, of how this whole connection goes, how that whole process happens.
Yeah, definitely the purpose of this presentation was to whet your appetite, give you some context for the Workforce Development Board, and from my standpoint, the need to work together as we move into the future.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 11.3 has been removed by addendum.
I was wondering why that item was removed from the agenda.
I think recommendation of the committee that was on that, I believe.
Well, no, I was on that committee.
Were?
And we
That was my guess.
did not recommend that.
This is the discussion
Prop 13.
regarding the Prop 13.
Because we wanted, I've been gone, so we haven't met. We wanted to talk about it again with the legislative committee in our next meeting.
But we already voted to support it and move it forward.
Well, we were also going to have, we're going to reach out to our assemblymen and senators and have them come in, and I thought that this would be a good topic to discuss.
Okay, I just have a concern the fact that we went through a process and we voted to move it forward. And so for one member to, outside of that process, ask to be taken off is a little concerning to me.
I don't think we took it off.
I would like it to move forward like we voted at our meeting.
I'm sorry.
Obviously,
it's
it
kind
can't
of not on
tonight,
our
but
agenda
at the
now.
next meeting, we voted
Okay.
to move it forward. I'd like it to move forward.
So it'll
please.
come back at the next meeting, and hopefully the committee will have met and be ready to move forward. Thank you. 11.4, presence of legal counsel at Board of Trustee meetings. This is, I guess, my item. This was from a request to have legal counsel present at all our meetings, available to answer, obviously, questions that come up during debate and when we're considering things. Amy, do you want to speak a little bit to this? This was your request, and I have a little bit of information to share with everybody afterwards.
Yeah. I asked for this item to come forward. I for several reasons. I think that, well, first of all, I know NVUSD and Vallejo Unified, City Council, Napa County Board of Supervisors, they all have their attorney present. And I think our meetings would run better, having answers to questions right on the spot. I think it would improve board relations. We wouldn't have to be trying to act like lawyers ourselves and challenging each other. We could just turn to our lawyer and have these questions answered. So I think our meetings would run better. And I think it's insurance. I know there's a cost, but I think having our attorney here to make sure everything is done legally and having them have a pulse on the community and the kinds of legal issues they're bringing forward is good insurance to hopefully prevent legal problems down the road. And I think it would pay for itself. I think it's a lot cheaper to have our attorney here than probably the cost of one lawsuit. So I just think it's a best practice, and I would like to, well, one, hopefully have some information about cost, but also I just would like to put that forward for discussion.
So let me give you a little bit of information about the cost, and then we can get an idea from everybody else about how everyone feels about this. So I did speak to our counsel about having them present, and the cost is basically they charge us by the hour. So their hourly rate is $3.20 an hour. So that's for all the time they'd be here, the time they need to prepare. They're going to want to review the agenda and see what's on there, so they have some idea of what they might be called upon to discuss or answer questions about. And then, obviously, if we have follow-up questions, then after the meeting, they may need to do some research or get back to us on certain issues. So I can't tell you exactly what the overall cost is, but just on a single meeting, if we run 4 hours, 3 hours is not uncommon. It gives you a sense of what that costs. So obviously it's something that we can do, but I think it was important for all of us to be aware of, at least in general, if we can't have a specific, hard number on what this is going to cost us, to be aware of that. And I'd certainly like to hear from everybody if you have an opinion.
Can I ask one question about the cost first before you open it up? You were going to check into the cost of having our attorney versus one of her staffers.
Well, that's actually, it's not a staffer. It's there's a little bit of, actually, it could be more expensive. She has a semi-retired partner, still works with the firm, that actually lives in Napa, that could be the person who is assigned to this. So there's a little bit of savings actually in travel, because they would charge us for travel if they're coming from their office in San Francisco or wherever they might live in the Bay Area. So in that sense, there's a little bit of savings there, but that's in general, the cost, the hourly rate.
So do you mean to say that the hourly rate for that individual would be the $350 as well?
$320.
Or $3 whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And there aren't any cheaper people in their firm.
Well, then we'd have, they could try, well, they wouldn't have the experience necessarily to be able to deal with the sorts of things that come up here. And actually, our counsel, Laura, told me they didn't have junior members of the firm that could really handle something like this. So her suggestion, other than her or another partner that would incur more fees, is that they do have this semi-retired partner here, Napa, who still works with them and has the experience.
So it sounds like to me, ballpark with prep and the time at the meetings, somewhere around could be $2,000 per month. So that seems costly to me. I don't know that, we always have Laura there, our attorney there, to reach out to if something questionable happens during a meeting, to consult with after a meeting or pre-meeting if we know there's something we need some expertise on. But I don't see during our meetings, it might be a parliamentary process that we may have some disagreement on during a meeting, but I don't know that it's really a full-blown legal opinion that's needed on much of our subjects. Am I wrong in saying that?
I'm thinking. Well, there's a lot of, I have a lot of notes I'm just scratching and down here. So I guess that it would be interesting, just as a kind of a free thought. I'm just kind of free floating here a little bit. Yeah, it would be interesting to have your expectations of what an attorney would do here. Parliamentarian versus expertise versus procedure. One attorney, there is no generalist in education who could answer the variety of questions on public policy, facilities, finance, labor, negotiations, Senate issues. It's just a body of knowledge. That's why they generally have a larger partnership. Also, I would advise the board going real time to an attorney who's going to opine at the moment is not going to happen. They're not going to give you on the spot a definitive answer. Depending on the question you ask, they'll answer the question. But I would think, I'm trying to think of a specific that we might actually drill into that would help.
I can give you some examples of times it would have been good to have an attorney present, if you'd like. Sometimes where legal questions came up that we spent a lot of time arguing that we could have just turned to our attorney and asked, and they could have answered it right then and there. Do you want me to give you a few examples?
I don't think an attorney is necessarily going to prevent a lawsuit either.
Okay, so based on what Marianne just said, $2,000 a month, that's times 12, $24,000 per year. We spent $23,000 on legal fees just this month. I don't know on what, because we don't really get like an annual review on what our legal services are going for. But, at one point on our closed session agenda, we had 7 potential litigation cases. I don't know, perhaps having somebody here knowing what was going on, those could have been prevented. I don't know, because I don't know what they were. But the point is that I think it's good insurance. I've been to city council meetings and county supervisor meetings, and yes, they do answer. They turn to them and they ask for legal opinion, and they turn around and they answer. And I can think of several cases where it would have been a benefit to have our attorney here, and I don't think $24,000 is actually that much. We dropped $70,000 for a survey and don't think anything of it. So to have $24,000 to have legal representation at every board meeting, I think is a good investment.
Could I ask Mr. Chair for like a straw poll?
I just want to kind of hear what you guys think.
One thing I want to say about the city council and board of supervisors is those people are in-house, full-time, you know, as far as the Board of Supervisors are, for the county.
County council
It's
there,
county
yes.
council that works for them. It's not an hourly fee, it's their,
That's true of
it's their
Napa, but it's
job.
not true of every municipality.
Not every municipality, but using the example I just heard, it is true. So that, you know.
And NVUSD and Vallejo Unified have attorneys present at their meeting as well.
I can see the expedience, the efficiency, and perhaps in the interpretation or translation of what's developed here to formulate a question and get it to the attorney and back. There might be some savings. I'd be interested in exploring it for a fixed period of time, like 3 or 4 months, or maybe as long as 6, to see the cost benefit. It's not new to this board. We've done it in the past. However, there were circumstances that surrounded, and everyone unique. And this is a completely different board, so it might be worthy of exploration.
Van Beer?
In open session, what would be a situation where an attorney's opinion would be necessary?
Well, legal questions do come up at times. I don't have one off the top of my head. I'm sure Amy does.
Okay, so very early on, when I was on the board, we had a large discussion about whether board members could post items on social media. And one board member said that we couldn't. And actually, our attorney later came forward and said we could, that we have freedom of speech, that we can post opinions on social media. We didn't need to have that argument. That's just one example. The Menlo property, we almost put that on the market without advertising it to all the different public entities. We had to undo a resolution and do a new resolution to do it properly. That all could have been avoided. So we're approving contracts all the time. We've sold properties. Right now we're talking about campus housing, a bond. These are serious issues, and I think it protects the college and it protects us as individual board members to have our attorney present.
Any other, Jennifer?
2 things, really. I don't know that I feel like we need an attorney here all the time, but I also don't feel like $24,000 is a lot of money. It sounds like a lot, but
That's not necessarily the cost. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. But if we were going to ballpark it, I don't feel like that should be a stumbling block to doing our jobs right. I kind of feel I'm kind of citing here with Trustee Baldini, that perhaps it's something we could try and see if it feels like it adds, or if it's of a benefit. And if we determine after a few months that it's not, then we can revisit and see if perhaps there's another means of getting the same type of service without necessarily having an individual be present. I think there's a couple of different options, but I think that if the board is open, I would support having at least on a trial basis.
Rosaura?
I'm the newbie here. Is our legal counsel, it's not solely for board members, right? I'm sure they deal with issues such as bonds and housing and maybe, $78,000 for legal fees. Maybe that's where it's going.
We have several district councils that we rely on for different aspects of the question. So there are legal experts in civil, and there are contract experts. There are generalists in labor law who are different than the public policy and finance experts. So generally, you look for a larger firm. Our present LCW, Laura Schulkind, has a pretty deep bench, if you will, and she's got a lot of expertise, a lot of transactional. I guess my just as long as I have the floor just for one second, my comment would be I don't think you should look at this as either or. The 22 or 4 or 5,000 that it would cost for the person to sit here will not avoid any of the other necessary legal costs that are incurred. They're unrelated. So if we have a risk analysis issue or a labor issue or an investigation that's ongoing, they're unrelated. So, the attorney here, I don't know. I mean, so I just don't want you to confuse those issues. We definitely probably would not address the issue that came up the following day to the attorney that happens to be here that night, because they're going to be a junior attorney, and
Well,
I don't know
the
what else to
person
do
that
with
she's talking about in Napa is not a junior attorney.
Yeah, I
She's
guess
she was a partner in the firm,
mhm.
and she's now semi-retired. So.
Right, no, but I understand what Ron is saying, that there are some issues that come up for the district that require specialists to deal with, and it's not going to be her person sitting here, whoever that is. Okay, well, I think with all that, I may want to ask her a few more questions and also consider kind of the budget. Where does this come from?
Would the budget need to be amended to add
So-
the service? Do we know?
that. It's not in the budget on that line item. It would, if it were so directed, Bob, you can just help me. This is going to come out of general funds, out of some other direction.
So if we were looking at doing this as a pilot for a few months to determine how much it actually costs per month and what benefit is derived from that, that would not be something that would necessarily require an amendment to the budget. If we're talking about a pilot that ends up costing $8,000 to $10,000, there's enough give in the budget to do that. If the determination was going forward, this costs us $5,000 a board meeting, but we really want to do it at every board meeting, that's significant enough that we would need to look at adjusting the budget.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'd like to...
Can I just make one last comment?
Okay, last comment.
Yeah, I just kind of, I feel like we're moving in the right direction as a board. We have the video up with timestamp minutes. I feel like we're elevating, the board's been elevated, and I think it would be, just take us to that next level of being a high-functioning board that's on par with all of these other public institutions. So just hope people will really consider it.
Okay, well, thank you. There's a couple of questions that I want to talk to the attorney about. One, that we could do kind of a trial period if we decide to do that, if they're willing to do that, as opposed to say, okay, we want, a contract to do the year or something. So I will kind of come back to the board with some information on that. Thank you. 11.5, the annual report, auxiliary organizations. Lee.
So hello, board, and thank you. And this won't be as exciting as career pathways or housing, but it's near and dear to my heart. To be clear, this is not the formal annual report that we discussed last month. And we'll be getting into sort of why that is as I progress here. In August, the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office released a new Bible for auxiliary organizations. And, excuse me, it has kind of changed the way we think about certain elements and caused us to review some documents and make some changes. Oops. Sorry. As just sort of a review, the two auxiliary foundations of the district kind of engage in a really wide variety of activities. And for the last couple of years, we've been formalizing their activities, wrapping our arms around what their needs, where the compliance requirements are, And these are just some examples. So 3 areas of obvious in the last 6 weeks of us digging in, areas where clarification, increased efficiency, and sort of simpler approaches have emerged are reporting structure and timing, the way we identify the areas of service in contracts, and how we're thinking about the use of public relations activities and funding. For reporting structure, and I think this is easily Bob's favorite change, the annual report due to the Board of Directors was in September and has now been moved to 6 months after the close of the fiscal year. So this aligns with other district financial reporting. And did you have a comment on that, Bob?
Sure. I just wanted to say that this does, as Carolee said, this aligns the requirements for an auxiliary organization with the requirements for the district as a whole. And so the district is required to submit an audited financial report by December 31st, which would be 6 months after the close of the fiscal year. And so in the past, the expectation for the auxiliary organization was that the report would be prepared before that deadline, which means that it was highly unlikely, and in fact is not the case this year, that the audited financial statements would be available at the time that the report was due from the auxiliary organization. So this just, from the State Chancellor's Office perspective, it lines the auxiliary organization up with the rest of the institution.
So we could have done a partial annual report, but we wouldn't have had final financials, and they're kind of a big piece of the final report. We looked at the templates for the master agreement with our legal counsel, and in the manual, there's a very short 3-page master agreement. It's lovely, but it didn't quite cover everything our legal counsel wished. So one of their recommendations was that we identify the services offered by each foundation with the same language as Title V. And so this list is the eligible activities for a foundation. Those in orange are the activities that our foundations engage in. So that later in the agenda, there are the master agreements on the consent calendar. You'll see these lists in various forms on each agreement. And probably our biggest challenge and biggest opportunity is how to account for and maximize the eligibility of 50% reimbursement by the foundation to the district in the form of public relations programs and activities. So when the Writers' Conference advertises that they are the Napa Valley College 35-year established nationwide Writers' Conference, we get benefit from that, and that has to be part of the equation of the relationship between the two entities. So Bob and I met today with Joe and came up with some possible formulas related to actual expenditures, but we're still kind of trying to figure out the intangibles and how to move forward with that. So in 6 months, more information will be coming your way.
So is that the law that 50%, only 50% can be in the form of non-monetary contributions? Is that where that comes from? It's like Ed Code or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
Title V, I believe, but yeah.
Carolee, I do have a question about that, and I had actually planned to ask it later, but now since we've brought it up. So I get that hasn't been determined yet, and it sounded, from reading the contract or agreement, that it would be something that was done on an annual basis or something. But would it be reported in detail as part of what you bring back to our board? Like how you determined that this was worth X amount of money, or or at least an itemized, this was determined to be, am I making sense?
Yeah, so what we talked about today was identifying PR activities in the chart of accounts and the budget, and then having a sum that you could take a 50% calculation of at the end of the quarter or end of the year. But we wouldn't typically report line item expenditures to you in our budget reports, so.
But we could potentially include that as a note to the financial statements in the annual audit. So to quantify what those contributions were and how we calculated that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so this review has kind of, in addition to the master agreement, got us looking at the administrative regulations, which are sort of the procedures that accompany the board policy on auxiliary organizations. You have a second reading of the policy and hopefully adoption tonight. And the rules are under review by the Council of Presidents. Yes, ma'am?
About the, one of the things I had a concern about, I actually asked for it to be on the agenda a while ago and hoping it will come forward, is the bylaws, because those were created in 2013. I saw a bunch of things in there I had concerns about. Is that something that's being reviewed, and will that be coming forward? Again, is that part of the big review, the bylaws?
Yes, we would probably look at those next. The requirement for those are corporate, but yeah,
okay,
definitely. And do you have any questions, particularly about the master agreements?
I have a couple, yeah. One of them we just covered. I want to see if I can get to the part that was about going into contracts and lease agreements up to 5 years. Was that based on what is that? Where does that come from?
That was to delegate authority to the board chair, the president, to approve what we call sort of long-term leases, but they're not really. They're, a long-term lease would be like we rented a building for a year to someone. It's more like our arrangement with Festival Napa Valley, where they came in for a month and they had an academy and a festival and a meeting and a party and because of legal's interpretation of the no obligation of district facilities by an auxiliary, we had to bring that to the board. And if we have to bring all of those arrangements to the board, it's going to be kind of an impediment. So that bit of language allows Ron and the board of directors to have the authority to enter into that arrangement.
Okay. I guess the 5-year chunk just kind of was like, that seems like an awfully long amount of time. I'm just wondering if there's an example of something that you can give us where that would be used versus coming to the board.
Well, maybe it should be a little clearer, but it wouldn't be a 5 continuous year rental, but the contract might be for 5 years. So with Festival Napa Valley, we're doing a pilot for 3 years. Because it's an investment on both sides, of time, energy, and learning curve. So it didn't make sense for a 1 year.
So that contract for 3 years gives them the right to have their event that month or whatever. They're going to have that space for a month.
Correct.
Each year.
Correct.
They're not going to have it for the 3 years running.
Correct. And it might also cover the Silverados Baseball League, where they're renting a ball field for a couple of months in the summer, putting up some concessions.
They might have the right to do that for 5 years, every August and whatever it is.
Exactly.
How do we, because in the language it doesn't distinguish that. It doesn't distinguish between, something happening once a month for 5 years and a 5-year consecutive rental of a space. So,
We would probably need to revise that.
Well, that would seem to be in the actual agreement with Silverado Baseball or the Napa Valley, whatever. Not this language, I don't think is going to cover those specific situations. You have to have a specific agreement for each one of those. Right? And this just prevents you from doing anything longer than 5 years.
Right.
Correct. So I'm hearing that it needs to be more specific and.
The specifics would be in the actual agreement with whatever organization is using it.
Right, but the authority for Ron to approve.
You can't approve anything more than 5 years, according to.
Yeah, this is, I think it's to that policy-specific AR issue. The policy is broad. The specifics then are in the actual agreements that detail it.
Right.
If there were something that rose to a level of everyday usage for 5 years or something, or some major thing, you will be assured it's going to come this direction and also work its way through probably many stakeholders because it has a broader implication.
You couldn't possibly put in this document every single scenario that might come up along the way, right?
No, I could not. Nor could Carolee. Carolee may, but she'd have to start working on it now.
Do you have the section that's in, Jennifer?
I do. It's section 7.
Thank you.
Real property. Is that the one we were talking? No, that's a different one. It's section 8.
Third-party agreement by the foundation.
So one of the functions of an auxiliary that's allowed is facilities or equipment rentals. And this just delegates to Ron that he can enter into those.
No.
But perhaps it should be
I guess.
Of agreements up to 5 years, rental occupancy of up to a month, if that makes sense.
I guess I'm not understanding how it, because the way it reads to me is that it doesn't need Ron's approval.
Well, in this case, a good point for an attorney being here. The interesting piece of this is the district really in this case is me, this does not read the board. I mean, so this would not be coming to you. What the essence of this is they do not want an independent 501c3 auxiliary doing something contrary to the district to which it belongs mission. And so this is a guide in that as it is. Now there's a lot of other policies in places and protections against that, but it basically puts us at least a limit there for you to see.
But does it require your authorization or not?
It does.
It does, because that's not. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but it sounds to me. It says without the prior written approval of the district, except that the district delegates to the foundation the authority to enter into blah blah blah. That to me sounds like they can do it completely independently.
Yes, except the bylaws call out the college president, whoever that might be, the superintendent president, to be the chair of this foundation.
Yeah, the president is the foundation.
So you've got to double check. You're always in a check position, right?
But even if you're a chair, you can't be outvoted on the foundation.
If they want to keep their jobs, no. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. So
I'm being a little flip, but the answer is no. We would bring it if it was that divisive or that, that the board would look at it. If it rose to that level where I really didn't feel I wanted to bring it, I would. There's got to be some major reason, it's something. I don't know what it might be, but it would certainly rise to your level. I would start bringing it to other constituents. They want to convert something.
I would maybe feel better if it said that we delegated did delegate it to you, because I feel like we could maybe delegate things to you. I don't know if we can delegate things to the foundation, but I still have concern about 5 years and it being so open-ended, because it does lend itself to renting out a space for 5 years and without any kind of board approval. So I don't know. I just think it should be looked at.
Well, I think we could revise the language to say that the agreement could be up to 5 years duration, and the rental term could be no more than 6 months. Whatever baseball needs really is the longest we need. Festival Napa Valley is
Yeah,
a
again,
month.
I just want to go back, and maybe, Bob, you're wonderfully adept at these things. However, I could, as CEO of the district, enter into a more than 5-year agreement now.
So can we say that we
Just me.
delegate this to you, to the
Well,
president?
I know, but I already have that authority. So this is about the foundation, not me. So what you don't want is the auxiliary entering into these without some limit, right? But because of the checks and balances we've done, having the president superintendent as the chair, you've ensured your position that the foundation is not going to run amok here and do something. So that's really the check and balance here.
And our legal counsel reviewed this?
Yes.
Okay, kind of similar question is, in the old contract, under real property, the old contract said, let's see, the auxiliary shall not enter into any transaction concerning purchase, sale, lease, rental of real property without the prior approval of the superintendent. Now it says the foundation shall not enter into any contract or other business arrangement involving real property by lease involving payments of more than $25,000 per year and duration terms of more than 1 year purchase without prior approval of the superintendent. So I just wondering about the reason for the change in that section.
I believe those, well, they either came out of the new template from the chancellor's office or they came from legal. And that's just an update on how they're approaching this matter. Instead of having it be a blanket, anything has to be brought to the board, there was a limit delegated to the superintendent.
Well, so before it wasn't the district, it said the district superintendent, and now if it's under a certain amount, it doesn't have to go to the district superintendent, so again, it's delegating it to the foundation. It seems like both of them kind of take something away from either the district or the superintendent and delegate it to the auxiliary board.
Well, the superintendent president, that's part of the structural clarification that has come out in the manual, is the oversight body for the auxiliary. It's not the Board of Trustees. The foundation submits its reports and its annual budgets to the superintendent president for approval. If he approves it, it gets moved on to the district's greater structure. So I think that's just what's reflected here. Under the,
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not seeing an issue as to how it's written, but maybe that's my misunderstanding.
It just seems like one of them, one takes away kind of power from the board and puts it onto the foundation, and the other takes it away from the president and puts it onto the foundation
It's
board.
actually, I think Ron explained in that first one where it says district, it's not us, the board, it's Ron. So there's a language inconsistency here that's, I think, creating part of this problem. And what Amy is saying, in my opinion, it is right. There's authority being delegated from Ron to the foundation to be able to do these things with these limits without having to come back to Ron, although Ron is the foundation, essentially.
I think 7 is for the foundation to go out and rent an office somewhere. And they can't do that without Ron's approval.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry. 8, actually, we do have a legal opinion that obligate the district's facilities, equipment, or personnel has to come to the board. And so 8 is a modification of that to delegate some of those powers to Ron as the board chair of the foundation. So real property isn't them, they have nothing to sell. They don't own anything in the district. They could manage a lease. And then 8 is to do the management of the lease. But they would have to go rent property under 7
No,
Does
right,
that
I
make sense?
understand that, but I think there's some language, some confusion being caused by the different terms that are used in each one of these.
Yes, and it might be that that could be revised.
Yeah.
And I just had one last question. The other difference I noticed between the old and the new is taking out the activities report. So in the old contract, it said that by once a year that the auxiliary foundation needed to provide this report of the costs of the facilities and services provided to the district. So is that being taken out because they have to do that anyway through the audit, or why was that taken out?
It's no
we
longer.
We were told we would get like an accounting of, not only their activities, but like what was reimbursed to the district. Is that because that's part of the audit now?
It will be part of the financials and the audit, and it is no longer recommended as a separate item by the Chancellor's office, which is good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just say, good work. I appreciate this. The reason that the new manual really came out is the kind of this evolve, that it's this business is getting more complicated, and auxiliaries are much more engaged than they used to be. So literally every community college in the state has an auxiliary now. Most of them are tracking what we're kind of doing as well. Bookstore, cafe, other kinds of things. And I think their goal here really is to protect the district from arbitrary foundation growth without any checks and balances. And again, we saw this coming down the pike, so we created bylaws at the get-go defining our directors as me and other senior leaders, which protects the district from that, and also including a board member on that board of directors.
Well, actually, I'll bring that up, I guess, because we're also talking about the policy, but since you brought it up, no, I'll save it for when we go over the policy, when we look at the policy.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Thank you.
So 11.6, first reading of the new revised or to be repealed board policies. Anybody opposed? Okay,
That's it.
Take a break.
And are you taking the cake home, or should I bring it out here for people?
Bring it out.
Okay, we're bringing chocolate cake out too, so there's some over there. It'll be here in a second. We'll be there. We have cake. Yes, we have cake.
So great, and what I'll do is I'll have our staff look at the apportionment reports that are coming in to see if we've received any additional funds. 50 grand, okay. Yeah, now if they do it the way they do most stuff, we'll get 1/12 of 50 grand every month. Because that's typically the way. Don't spend more than 1/12 of 50 grand every month.
So I want to see pictures. And what's his name?
His name is William Finn.
It is so adorable. It's a big boy. How many pounds? 8 pounds?
8 pounds, 12 ounces, 21.5 inches long.
Oh my goodness.
There he's sleeping. He does that a lot.
Well, he's only a week, yeah.
That was prepping for his first outing. Most of them are probably of him sleeping. Coming home.
Transitional picture.
Start and be a family friendly. Super wide eyed.
Like, I'm ready.
It was crazy. I wasn't alert and on top of it. You got the best one girl with his eyes open. Always got his thumb or his hand.
No, I did. Jenny yeah. Oh, okay.
The hospital room that we stayed in. We were at Kaiser Village.
Did my last two Kaiser Village.
They don't do that anymore. They give you a bag full of one. Couple what I like nursing. But no, hubbies are kind of chopped They stopped doing it like a month before, I think. A really good, nice little backpack full of snacks.
Doing it like again. As soon as we try to transition to it, I'd like to look. She's at American King University. Right. I don't think so. She got up and took care of business. Material height.
I see that. I see that. So one solution. They couldn't get That's going to change. Oh my God. This is not my typical. No, he's so Tim, I want his new job. Well, I love
crazy looking one.
I can't do it. Like I said, I couldn't do it. I could not do it at all.
No. Didn't get past it. And you just hope that Yes. I feel weird just because I'm not breastfeeding, so what do I get to do other than change diapers?
She did a great job.
Phases where I was like, okay, no, you have to take one night. Trying to sleep and keep that.
See, I feel no transition, but right now it's every 2 hours you change a diaper. Really? You just don't know. Got a clean diaper, he'll sleep. And he won't.
Yeah. Need some coffee? How much do you have to go back and listen to the audio to capture the minutes? Do you ever have to go back and like re-listen to things? Right.
Slept and
Yeah, definitely.
You know what's funny?
just wait. Take it.
You might be lucky that it might not.
That slowly filled up. I gotta do my dishes when I get home. Housekeeping, all the chores. And I wasn't planning on taking time off right now. No, that's why I got up a couple times. My mom came out and checked. Lift anything or bend over. Answer right now. Well, can I answer that?
No, because it's closed, so I had to use this water over here. I'm so thirsty that anyway. I need one of those things in this building.
Yeah, we talked about trying to get one.
Bob, we need one of those water refills in this building.
Yes. Michael still has $100.
She said 2. I said 1.
And then you didn't want my money. Ah.
There's one in the 1300 building? So there's one, is that the gym?
No, that's Oscar's building.
I can
Student services. Yeah, that's where I tried to go into just now, but it was locked. Yeah.
It was, I love that when they come in and they're talking about faculty though, because it's like, we really need that.
Wait, say it again, sorry.
I loved it.
Because these aren't filtered, right?
Feels like midnight, but it's only.
Yeah, it does. Marianne, where are you going? Okay, returning from break. Back to 11.6, the first reading of new, revised, or to be repealed board policies. Who is on this one?
Carol Lee?
You know, Carol, I'm going to ask you, what should we be doing here?
These are actually partially mutual agreements. So the Senate is working on them. They've been through the Council of Presidents, and they are just a first read. We have securing of copyright, which we haven't had, intellectual property, which we had a previous policy, but it was very old. And then maybe Amanda would like to speak to credit by exam. And
well,
no?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I beg your pardon too, because, yeah. Eric was scheduled to take this, but he's out with his son this evening, you know, due to some other issues, and so that's why I called in Carol Lee to help us out. But Amanda, if you'd like.
Well, we had a policy on the books that was credit by external exam, and then we had some regulations that dealt with external exam, and now we've gone back and properly included all exams, both internal and external, and so there are two regulations that go with this more general policy on credit by exam.
I think Amy was first.
I'm just wondering if any of them deviate from what was suggested by the CCLC.
I believe this one excludes an optional piece of language related to a test, but I'm going by memory.
I am too. I wasn't prepared. I haven't looked at these for
Okay.
a while, so.
We can certainly get that answer, and this is a first reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my only question, is if any deviated, and if they did, if they were reviewed by our legal counsel. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, so does any deviation have to go to legal counsel? Because I'll just let you know that we don't adhere to the legal language just outright. I mean, when we make changes, we do it because we think it's appropriate.
Yeah, so.
We don't take out anything legally required, but if the group working on it sees, where it's optional, sometimes they do veer from the language.
Yeah, it's like I think CLEP, we don't use that standard, so it was removed.
Yes, that's my only question.
First read, I guess my suggestion for the board chair and for them, if you have questions, just please forward them over and we'll look. It's first read and we'll get back to those.
We'll get the league policy for you.
Great, thank you. 12, consent calendar. Are there any items anybody has a question about?
I had questions about the agreements, but we kind of addressed them earlier.
Okay, so there being no questions or request for removal from the consent calendar, it's adopted by consensus.
Second.
It's adopted by consent.
Oh, well, I consent then.
Are we doing our?
But thank you for your enthusiasm.
Are we voting by
No.
No.
By consent would just be done.
Okay,
Don't
so
raise the
item,
cane.
item 13, action items. 13.1, ratify financial documents. Does anybody have questions or comments on the financial documents? If not, do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Electronically?
Let's do electronically. We
Are you
have the
doing that?
technology. If we're up.
Things got stopped and logged out, so if you'll give me just a moment to log in, I can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, and I'm sorry, who made the motion and second?
A second.
Now we'll see if you can click.
Okay, it should be going now.
Oh, there.
Motion was approved unanimously.
Thank you. 13.2, public hearing, Napa Valley CCD 2017. And is that supposed to say 2018? Adoption, final budget.
And you're going to open that public hearing and then close it.
So I will open the public hearing. And do
In hearing, no,
Do we
anybody
have
wants to
any-
speak to it?
no one would like to speak to this item? Seeing no one approaching the podium, I will close the public hearing.
There you go. Now
Is there- Go down to 13.3, 2017, 2018 final budget.
Second.
I think he's going to present. Yes. I need him.
Yeah.
We have a,
Yeah, heck yeah, they're happy to do that.
I have a question. Can I ask it now? Mr. Chair?
do you have a question on
Budget?
the presentation? He might answer it in the presentation.
Okay. I don't think so, but go ahead.
Oh, that's a challenge. That's right.
Write it in your pencil. Slide, please.
Oh, no, not again, right?
You got it, Maria?
Who hasn't seen this yet? A couple of them, maybe. Have you seen it?
Right. Good evening, board, staff, community members. I believe we still have some community left. So thank you for being here, or, for allowing us to present the 2017-18 final budget. As Amanda had mentioned earlier in her report, we're in our first year of piloting, merging our committees. So the planning committee was a shared governance committee, as was the budget committee. So we did merge it in August, and listed up here our committee members from both planning and budget. We did absorb some of our former planning committee members and also kept some of our former budget committee members. So in the hopes of facilitating communication, expediency with processes that we have to do throughout the year, we did approve through our committee, the Planning and Budget Committee, the final budget to present to you.
This is just a brief timeline of the processes that we went through. We've been working on this for about a year. Started last year. We did have planning priorities that the board approved back in 2016 that were for 2 years. And you can sort of list, so you saw this as part of our tentative budget that we brought to you back in June. The final budget was presented to the campus community in an open forum back in September 5th, and I believe Trustee Baker was there, so thank you for being there. And we're here today to present the budget for your approval. Just really quickly as a reminder, we did have 5 planning priorities. First one being using results of student learning outcomes. Second one, facilitating a seamless progression of our students. Third, evaluating and improving instruction and services. Fourth, evaluating and increasing the effectiveness of institutional planning processes. And fifth one, developing an integrated resource planning system. I'm going to turn it over to Robert Parker, who will go over the rest of these slides.
Thanks, Maria. And since Trustee Baker was at the forum, if you have any questions at the end, you can direct them to
I thought you were going to say I could go take a break.
Well, that too. Just to be back for the vote. So our revenue assumptions really have not changed, but the impact of some of those revenue assumptions on our local budget have changed. And that's really because of that switch, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, from being a state apportionment funded district to a community supported funded district. And so the state cost of living increase came in at 1.56%, but as we're not apportionment funding, that really only affects our categorical funding, so our SSSP, our student equity, things of that nature. The state base funding increase of $160 million really has no impact on our budget because that would have increased were we apportionment funded. That would have given some additional apportionment funding. But given the fact that we've switched to being community supported, not an impact on our budget for this year. Property tax revenue, we are projecting to increase at 4% based on previous trends from previous years. And then, as I say, we shifted from being state apportionment funded to community supported funding. And so we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating. What does that mean? The state determines what our total computational revenue would be based on the number of full-time equivalent students we serve and the dollar amount per full-time equivalent student, plus some other factors like a certain level of funding for a college of our size and a certain level of funding for a center of the size of the Upper Valley campus. Once the state determines what that computational revenue will be, then they look at your local enrollment fees and your local property taxes. And to the extent that your local enrollment fees and local property taxes do not meet that total computational revenue, then the difference comes from the state, and that's your apportionment. And so, as we've said before, if your total computational revenue is $30 million, you collect $3 million in enrollment fees and $22 million in property taxes, then the state gives you that $5 million difference. If, however, your enrollment fees and property taxes meet or exceed that total computational revenue amount, then you do not receive apportionment funding. And the good news is that to the extent that those local revenues exceed that total computational revenue, you keep that locally. And so in our example, the last bullet there, if total computational revenue is $30 million, we collect $3 million in enrollment fees and get $28 million in property taxes, that's $31 million. That $1 million in additional revenue stays at the local district. So when we looked at, and what I should preface this all by saying there are very few changes from the tentative budget that you adopted in June and the final or approved budget that we are presenting to you today. We still have the same funding priorities that came out of the planning and budget process and the area council. So from Office of Instruction, additional funding for instructional supplies, lab equipment, accrediting agency fees for the health occupations program, entry fees for athletics, equipment repair for the VWT program, things of that nature. In student affairs, equipment for the AOPS, veterans and veteran services offices, funding for an increase in Umoja Consortium fees, some membership fees to ensure that we are members as an institution of organizations that we should be at the table with to represent Napa Valley College. An increase in local funding for work-study programs and equipment and licensing fees for college police. In administrative services, we just had 2 additional funding requests, and that's not because we don't need any money, but rather we had things funded in last year's budget that we are implementing this year, and so no additional funds were required for that. We need an additional vehicle and facilities, and we're purchasing some cleaning equipment for the facilities department. And then finally, when we look at the president's area, in the president's office, we did put some additional hours of legal consulting in there this year. That was really to account for the fact that legal fees exceeded the budget last year. We also have professional development opportunities funded for the Board of Trustees. We put some funding in for 75th anniversary activities, and in the Office of Human Resources, some additional supplies and materials and advertising to allow us to do more outreach. In terms of staffing, we did fund some additional staff positions, and that funding for additional staff positions was to replace the use of hourly employees and consultants. So there were some areas where we were consistently using hourly employees or consultants. Those were really ongoing needs of the district, and so we added some positions at the Performing Arts Complex and Arts and Humanities, just to name a few of the positions that were added. So now, looking at the budget, so what you see, and this is the general fund unrestricted budget. In your full packet, you have the restricted funds as well. But looking at general fund unrestricted, where most of the changes would be taking place, we see the final budget, the tentative budget that you approved in June. So the final budget for 16-17 is the first column. Tentative budget that you approved in June for 17-18, and then the final budget that we're presenting to you tonight for 17-18, and the differences between the tentative budget and the final budget. The most significant shift, you can see that income is only projected to be almost $29,000 higher between the final budget and the tentative budget. The big shift is where those funds are coming from. So increase in local income, decrease in state income, not a surprise as we shift to being community supported. I will point out that when you see the final numbers for 16-17, you will see that that shift took place last year. So while we budgeted $7.5 million in revenue from state income, it really came in at closer to $4 million. Conversely, local income, budgeted at 29, came in at 33. So that shift really took place beginning in 16-17. If we look at expenses, and this is the only place where you see changes between the tentative budget and the final budget, we are looking at increasing faculty salaries permanent and faculty salaries temporary by $100,000. That really reflects the fact that we came in a little over budget on faculty salaries in the 16-17 fiscal year. I would say, however, that when you look at the fact that we are at $13 million in faculty salaries in the budget. We came in about $130,000 over budget. That's pretty close in terms of materiality. That's pretty close. I will also say that those shifts, if you took salaries and benefits as a whole, we actually came in slightly under budget on salaries and benefits for fiscal year 16-17. So that's what you're seeing is a rebalancing of those accounts and not really an increase. Because if you shift, so the other thing that increased in salaries was classified salaries temporary. And so those hourly assignments came in over budget last year. Now, permanent classified came in under budget last year, and that really reflects the fact that there were vacant positions that were being filled by temporary employees. Didn't really want to decrease classified salaries, however, in this budget, in recognition of the fact that we may see some impact of the classification and compensation study in the current, in 17-18. The offset is in health and welfare benefits. Our health and welfare benefits came in significantly under budget in 16-17. Now, we all know that health and welfare benefits are increasing. We typically budget those health and welfare benefits based on a percentage of employee salaries. And we just found that the percentage that we used in 16-17 for the budget was a little higher than it needed to be. So notice increase of $450,000 in salaries, decrease of $421,000 in employee benefits. So taking into account that extra $28,860 that we got in revenue, we still have a balanced budget. No changes projected in the books and supplies, other operating expenses, capital outlay, and cabinet priorities. That reflects the continued inclusion of those additional funding requests that came through the budget process, as well as the inclusion of additional funds to support our scheduled maintenance in facilities and our technology refresh policy to purchase new technology equipment. So so we are still presenting a balanced budget, revenues equaling expenditures for the final budget. Having prepared the final budget to present to you tonight, we then went back and updated our 3-year forecast. So what you see in the 3-year forecast is the actuals for 15-16, the final budget for 16-17, the final budget that you're seeing tonight for 17-18, and then using that final budget as the base for 18-19 and 19-20, the projections for those 2 years. We are projecting that we will continue to maintain our uncommitted fund balance of about $5.6 million. We're not projecting to add to that uncommitted fund balance in this 3-year projection because there are items that we are continuing to address as revenues start to increase. So, for example, we know that we have faculty salary increases that are part of the contract that was ratified last year. So those are budgeted for that 3-year period. We also know that we need to continue capital outlay to support our scheduled maintenance program and our technology refresh. A couple of things to note, in 18-19 and 19-20, we can see that we're projecting an excess of income over expenditures in 18-19 of a little over $400,000 and an excess of income over expenditures in 19-20 of about $138,000. We're not at this point looking to move that into any particular line item. We do know that there will be some additional needs in the salary lines as a result of the classification and compensation study. So that's kind of our reserve for that. So notice that over that period, we are maintaining the $5.6 million uncommitted fund balance. Now, the percentage that our uncommitted fund balance represents for unrestricted expenditures does decrease because unrestricted expenditures keep going up. We do, however, maintain a level that is above the 12% that we set as a goal. And we also know that as we move, as you may remember, we set an aspirational goal for 6 years from last year or 5 years from now of 15%. What happens once we get past 1920 is that things that have been increasing over these past few years are projected to stabilize. So PERS and STIRS increases currently forecasted max out in 1920. So that when we get to 2021 and 21-22, we can start to build that uncommitted fund balance up to that 15% aspirational goal. So just a couple more things to note. Set aside money for PERS and STIRS increases. We are in year 2 of that 3-year set aside, so there's additional funding for those increases through 18-19. Our OPEB contribution, you approved a new other post-employment benefits contribution plan last year. Those continue to increase as we get up to being more fully funded. Those are included in the budget as well as the 3-year forecast. The salary increases for faculty are included. We have that additional funding for technology and scheduled maintenance. And then finally, we expect the results of the classification and compensation study in 2018, and that will impact the needs in, bless you, classified salaries and administrative salaries going forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mary Ann?
And no, it wasn't answered, so there. So my question's about reserves.
Yes.
I had a constituent, somebody in my community who is a retired educator.
Mm-hmm.
And she came to me and said, what's up with the reserves? Why is everybody moving towards these higher reserves? And her belief is that that's not a good idea because there's all this money sitting there that we should be using. As an educator, that's her thought. I don't know how other educators feel about that, but anyway, she was pretty convinced that that's not a route to go, and I let her know that I would try to find out what your thoughts were on that.
Sure. So first of all, we, as an institution, we came up with the 12% reserve because that would be a reserve that would allow us to fund salaries and benefits for a 2-year period. I'm sorry? 2-year, yeah, 2 month, really. I wish it was 2 years. 2-month period. Thank you, Maria. The main reason that it's important for us at this particular point in time, so years ago, a number of colleges and the State Chancellor's Office said you must maintain at least a 5% reserve. And part of the reason for that is that during the economic downturn in California, the money that was coming from the State Chancellor's Office was deferred. And so payments that were due in August would be made in November. And so as a result, it caused cash flow problems for many districts. And so that was why districts were encouraged to maintain a 5% reserve and even above that if possible. Now, the one thing that shifting from state apportionment to community funded does for us is that while it guarantees to an extent the amount of money that we get because all of our money is local, so we're not really as impacted by the shifting tides in Sacramento and what's being funded and what's not. State apportionment money comes in on a monthly basis. Taxes only come in twice a year. And so when you're relying on property tax revenue, which is a good thing, but when you're relying on property tax revenue, you need to have reserves for cash flow purposes, because you have to get through 6 months before the next big allocation of revenue comes in. So for us at Napa Valley College, that's really the reason why we want to have that 12% and even increase it ultimately to 15%, so that we've got the cash on hand to ride out any downturn in cash flow because of the way our revenue's coming in.
I'd like to add to that too, that just things happen. You know, we could have another earthquake, we could have a building burn down, things like that, that, you know, even when you have FEMA or you have insurance, those things take months sometimes for you to get reimbursement. So you always need to have some money on hand for the unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Does that give you,
Thank you.
what you need?
Gave
Okay.
me enough information to.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So I think it was the PERS and STIRS that you said will stabilize in a couple years. It won't continue to go up.
Yeah, so we are currently, and you know, nobody can predict what's going to happen as the state continues to look at PERS and STIRS, but we are getting to the point where we're hitting what was projected as the maximum contribution for PERS and STIRS. So that's expected to happen not in this 3-year projection, but the next year after the 3-year projection.
The OPEB.
So the OPEB will continue to, the OPEB contribution will continue to increase for, our OPEB plan started a year ago, and there are increases over the next 10 years until we get to the maximum. But we are building that into our 3-year projection, and we'll continue to build that in as the projections roll forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Maria.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the final budget. Huh?
You already got it. It's up.
Still need the motion in the second, though. I move to approve.
No, we
already did.
already did that. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Before Bob could even get up there, right? Yeah, you should have said
Yeah. That's right, we had discussion.
It's approved unanimously.
Thank you. Dr. Kraft?
Yeah, I want to thank the Planning and Budget Committee and Bob and Maria. Great leadership. This is really all across the board, faculty, staff, administrators really did a great job bringing this in, and it's not an easy task, as you know. So I want to commend you, Bob, and your team for really doing just a great job. Thank you.
And Michael wasn't really trying to take your spotlight, you know.
No, not at all.
Okay, 13.4, Human Resources Document.
Move to approve.
There a second?
Point of information.
Yes.
What does forced approved mean?
What are you referring to?
Under workflow on 13.4, it says forced approved. What does that mean?
13.4, I don't, oh, I'm looking.
For what? Oh. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Was there a second?
Was there? I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. Call the question.
Approved unanimously.
Thank you. 13.5, second reading. And approval of BP 3600 rules for auxiliary organizations.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Amy?
I just had a question. So all the things that were struck, all the details, is the idea that those will go into the AR and that will come before us later?
The AR does not need to come before you as a regulation. But yes, they were struck and moved into the regulation to match the league policy. Although now we're tweaking it a little bit with the new manual information.
So, let's see. So there's one part, and this is actually in the bylaws, so I guess it's still covered, but I was reading the ed code on auxiliary organizations, and one of the things that it came up, and when I was reading it, is that the composition of the board of directors is decided by this board, and we're taking it out of the board policy, but it is in the bylaws. It's the same language in the bylaws. But I do want to point out, because there's been discussion about board members serving on the board of directors, and I just want to point out that both in the board policy and in our bylaws, that's not one of the options in terms of being on the board of directors. So I'm trying to find it in the old policy.
I thought that we had modified our guiding documents to allow for that, and it is specified as allowable in the new manual.
Okay, so just a second. Well, I pulled up the bylaws, and they still say the same thing that this old policy says in terms of who can be members. But even if the bylaws were changed, that would need to come before the board. So here's the ed code says.
Yeah, I think they did, actually.
No, we never voted on the bylaws. We never voted on a bylaw change in terms of membership for the board of directors for the auxiliary organizations. So it says in ed code, it says each auxiliary organization formed shall have a board of directors composed both as to size and categories of membership in accordance with regulations established by the district governing board. So I guess what I'm saying is that if we're going to change the bylaws, that it needs to be approved by the board in terms of the membership. And currently, the membership is, the board members are not among the options. So I just wanted to confirm that the board members that are on those boards are acting as advisory and aren't voting members of those boards. Is that accurate?
I'll double check, Amy, but I am almost 100% sure, going by memory here. We checked with legal, we changed the documents, and we've talked about this several times. So I think all our ducks in a row, but I'll verify again.
Okay, yeah, the board, but you're saying that we think that we approved those bylaws change, this board?
I'm thinking that whomever needed to approve the bylaws did.
Okay, well, we've never brought the bylaws forward because I actually have a lot of questions about the bylaws. I'm hoping they will come forward, but they've never been come forward for a change by this board. So I'm assuming since the board had to approve the bylaws that we would have to approve any changes to the bylaws. And
reasonable.
Membership composition in ed code specifically says that this board decides membership. So that couldn't be changed without that going before this board.
Our board did determine to have a board member on there. And that's when
I remember that.
The original discussion was that it would be advisory, and Joanne Busenmark was here. I actually agreed with her for a change, and actually made the point that the reason why that position should be advisory is because no board member can act separate from this board. They have no power to act separately from this board. So being a voting member on an auxiliary it would be, she said she wouldn't go for it. We actually agreed with that. And then somewhere along the line, all of a sudden they became voting members, and that never came before a vote before this board. So that's a situation. I mean, I approve of the policy change. It's kind of a separate note, but I'd like the bylaws to come forward, and we need to clarify the role of these board members on these auxiliary foundations.
We can certainly do that.
Okay, Manvir?
In the final paragraph, there appears to be one too many spaces between a period and the word such state funding. In the final paragraph, right there.
Oh, I think it's a justified paragraph, so it kind of spaces out so the right edge can be even, and that's kind of what you're seeing.
That's
But that's
right, justified.
But
but it shouldn't be justified that way, so
Should
thank you.
not be, yeah. But that's what you're saying, so thank you. We'll correct.
So is it supposed to be like that or
No, it's not.
Okay,
It's not.
okay.
No, I'm just saying that's what you're seeing, so, yeah.
Okay, I think we had a
Motion in a second.
first and a second to approve, so call the question.
It passed unanimously.
Thank you. 14, board reports. 14.1, standing committee and other appointment reports. We have the Viticulture and Winery Foundation Board of Directors. Iverson?
The VWT Foundation Board did meet. I missed the meeting, but I did come in after my wife was in labor, so I missed that one.
No excuse.
I went to a board meeting when I was in labor once.
Rock star. I did come back. I came in earlier this week and did meet with Dr. Kraft, and I reviewed the minutes. So, a couple things. We have a new marketing assistant part-time for the Viticulture and Wine Technology Foundation. That's Claudette Shadow. Hope I pronounced that right. We're currently working on a draft job description for a student event, support for wine-related events. Ann Branch, Executive Director of the Napa Valley College Foundation. She's working on a grant to help fund the campaign. We also, vineyard wine production was discussed. Our campus vineyards are health, the fungus issues has decreased. And this year, our yield is lower than last due to the issue with irrigation. We need funds for a new pump. We're working on creating a marketing plan for working with the VWT Foundation. Claudette Shadow, of course, is going to be part of that committee or part of that group that's working on it. And the board did approve a master agreement addendum and quarterly and year-end financial reports ending in 6/30/17. So our next meeting is scheduled for November 2nd, and I will be there.
Great,
That's
thank
my
you.
report.
Legislative Affairs Committee?
We did not meet this month. Our next meeting is in October, and I don't have the date in front of me, but we will be meeting in October.
Okay. Audit and Finance Committee, Mancuso.
We have done that, but I think we are soon.
Yes, we are. So we'll be scheduling a meeting in October with the auditors.
District Auxiliary, Rosaura?
We were rescheduled, and our next meeting will be October 30th? October 24th?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just one other thing. I can't remember if we had, but Manveer had asked to be part of the legislative committee. So I don't know.
I think we
Did
took
we?
that up before.
That's what are you?
No one came back to me on that. I did ask about it. I didn't get a
Thought
response
we,
back.
Was there a question? Because I thought we addressed that.
It's not a quorum, so you're
So, so I can go to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're in.
Yay.
So you are officially appointed to the committee.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. 14.2, ad hoc committee reports, real property asset management, Baldini.
We met via telephone, at least Chairman Rios and myself. Iverson was somewhat missing, or he was missing it. I think something about giving birth or something like that. But we were on a conference call with Mr. Bob Parker and Dr. Kraft regarding their report on the process of the interview and their recommendations as far as the company that they were going to bring forward to the board on this date, which was what we heard earlier about the housing, Balfour Beatty. We did ask for some clarification, which was answered this evening on again, the process of the RFQ and then the respondents and how the net was cast, if you will, and the feedback and response and so on and so forth, which we look forward to continued discussion. But that was the extent of our involvement, and we made no selection. We just heard from the staff regarding their recommendation, which we heard tonight.
Thank you. I see you getting ready, Mary Ann.
I'm ready.
You're ready.
So staff, Cynthia and Carolee did a fabulous job of putting some drafts together for us to have for today, but I was out of town last week and did not follow up with that, so we did not get the feedback to them and get those in front of us tonight. So we'll definitely give them feedback before next meeting, and we'll bring them back. But thank you for doing that.
Okay, thank you. 14.3, future agenda items. This is something we've been working on, and it's now on our agenda. This is to hear if people have items they want to suggest for a future meeting. There's no discussion on these items. It's just a simple description of what it is you might want to see on the future
I
agenda.
feel like somebody should make something up just in honor of the fact that it's there.
I'll do it. I don't even have to make it up.
Cake? I mean, cake.
Well, I've already said it, but I'll just reiterate here. A review of the Auxiliary Foundation bylaws and also the Prop 13 reform statement that was pulled from tonight's agenda.
I'll jump in. I'd like to hear from our sports teams, men's soccer, women's soccer. I think it'd be nice to have them come in. I think it also, just especially with our 75-year anniversary.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in too. I think I brought this up once, but I'll go ahead and get it on the record. I would like to see a presentation from Oscar's team about our programs, maybe one individual program, maybe a menu of those programs, but I really find it helpful when people come in, like we heard about curriculum or various things, but to hear more about like EOPS. I find when I go to those events and sit down with people that I'm finding out all kinds of information I had no idea about. So that would be helpful.
Is that not something kind of what we were doing with the board
pre-workshop
workshops?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We could certainly, and we've talked to Oscar about doing
That could be
doing
that could be a workshop, yeah.
So I just want to, just a general statement, just stress that we talked about making these items things that are actionable, things that are within our purview and that we are going to take action on to streamline our meetings.
So I think, anyway, Mary Ann's, I think that's something we're continuing, right?
I
pre-board.
don't think we ever, no, I don't think we ever
That's what
said
she
that.
said.
No.
I don't recall that.
Agenda items, period, they were not specified as action.
And when we met with when our
or
attorney came and
otherwise.
talked about how we can make our meetings more efficient, she mentioned that we should have an action-oriented agenda, that they're either coming to us or they're going to be coming to us.
That's not what the committee proposed forward that we agreed on, so.
I like the idea, though, of having it as a pre-board workshop or something, just as a means of getting more in tune.
Thank you. Any other items? I think we've got quite the list here.
Yes, well, definitely the housing.
That's on. Okay.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know if this would be the right venue for it, but I would like to look into raising the student representation fee from $1 to $2, and the second dollar would be going toward the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. If that could be like a discussion to see how the board feels about it. It would have to be voted on by the student body, but I would like to see what the board thinks about that.
Well,
Would that be under our purview or no?
That seems to be out of our purview, isn't it?
Well, we could.
In raising the SRF, would the board have to vote on it eventually? Or no?
I think that would probably work its way through ASMBC up through that channel first, but we can certainly address it. I mean, having it here is just.
I just wanted us to talk about it once. Yeah. Not that we would approve it, but to talk about it and see how the board feels about it. Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility, but I think you just said these are action items that you only wanted on this, right?
Oh, okay.
No, there was a difference of opinion on whether that was the case. So we'll look into that.
I guess our answer is if it's appropriate. And there's
there are
reason.
other considerations that it's appropriate for the board to consider, and timing and those other sorts of questions. So, okay, let's move on. 14.4, trustee and board chair reports. Manveer, let's start with you.
I attended the bond feasibility meeting today, and then before that, the police academy graduation. And just today, so over the summer, I interned with the foundation with the Civic Impact Scholars Program. And today, their coordinator reached out to Ben and I and emailed us saying, Emily from, who's the executive director of CalPERG, was interested in connecting with Napa Valley College for some potential partnership in the future. So that's something I will be getting involved in, hopefully, with CalPERG. And then the other thing was, I have some good news on AB 17, which is a pilot pass program through the state legislature. And working with SSCCC, that was a bill we co-sponsored, and it has passed the Senate and Assembly, and it's going on to the governor's desk to become law, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And then I look forward to attending our board retreat, the Adults Correction Academy graduation, and the December Police Academy graduation. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. Amy?
I went to the opening of the Midsummer Night's Dream play, which was fantastic, and I know there's several more performances, so if anybody hasn't seen it, I would recommend it. It's going up, I think it's up Valley now, perhaps, but it's coming back to Copia at some point. And then I'm busy reading the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0 for our retreat, and I think that was a good selection. I think it was, I'm not sure if the faculty recommended it, but whoever recommended, I think that was a great choice, and I'm enjoying that book. And I already said it, but I appreciate the increased communication that I've been noticing through the all-staff emails, the college newsletters from Mr. Ernst, and also some of the statements that you've made, Dr. Kraft, to the staff regarding things that are happening nationally. So appreciate that. That's it.
Thank you. Rosaura?
Let's see. I attended the Napa Valley Community Foundation town hall meeting held on the 7th, and it had to do with immigration. And the day before, President number 45 had rescinded DACA, so that it was on the agenda, or it was mentioned, not necessarily on the agenda. And there they requested funds to help Dreamers to renew their permits, or they requested so that to give them the money to renew their permits, which is $495. Got an email today. They got 77 donors for a total of 44,838, and they were only asking for 30,000. So that was great. And after that, there was a reception at the museum. on the exhibits, both the Smithsonian exhibit and another artist, which very good paintings, but the important exhibit is the Bracero. I also attended Shakespeare, the Upper Valley campus. Great program. Napa Valley Hispanic Network had their banquet on Friday. It was a great event, and we had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
I attended one of the bond forums, and it was well attended. A lot of great questions and great presentations. The wine legislative meeting. I thought that was very cool to have that Senate committee, legislative committee here in our boardroom, and the panel that was here. The room was full. It was wonderful. It was really great. It was great for us to have that kind of visibility, but also to see how this room could be used. I really liked that. That was great. Also, I attended in Anaheim the California Democratic Party Executive Board, because I'm a member, and met some other community college board members, Board of Trustees, one from LA, one from San Francisco. And it was just really interesting to hear from them what they're doing, and some of it was around free tuition for community colleges. So I came back all excited with some great ideas and shared them with Ron. So I'd love to see us explore more of those opportunities too, and they're much larger than we are, but from big schools come big ideas, right? Went to last week in Monterey, the California Workforce Association conference, and I was there with Bruce, with our board, and we did a presentation that got star reviews. I was very happy about that. One of the things that I sought out information, and of course Diana was there too, which I didn't know she was going to be, was, just how to bridge those organizations together, to bridge community colleges and the workforce development boards. And I'm very excited because Diana and Bruce got on their calendars a monthly meeting. So I think that's where we're going to have a great deal of impact. Went to the Hispanic Network banquet. That was great. We had a Government Affairs Committee meeting in American Canyon this morning. Sherry Tennyson was there and talked about job fairs and all that they're going to be doing here at the campus. A lot of local employers were very interested in those programs and how to get involved in those job fairs. And I want to thank Dr. Kraft for the DACA statement.
Thank you. Michael?
Good evening. I was able to attend the Police Academy graduation. Thanks to the Register for the coverage. As well as the Psych Tech graduation, which was over at the Napa State Hospital. And that was a little bit different from our previous graduations in that the party was before the graduation. So lots of food and drink before everything got started on a nice warm Friday night. I again have run across folks through my position in the valley with a winery. Folks at a federal judge from Oklahoma taught at Mesa College, done Southern California law. He's retired. He's come back to California, as well as a business owner that sold their business in Michigan and wants to teach. And so I'd like to forward their CVs on.
Resumes, yeah.
On to our Dr. Kraft for further.
We'll just send them straight to Charo and skip the intermediate, yeah.
And then the opportunities, as I mentioned before, the fellow that is president of a company that installs water filtration devices, and as well as to partner with Napa College in some aspect. They do winery as well as brewery wastewater, and they're willing to install a demonstration project for us. They just want somebody to talk to.
That would be Bob.
So anyway,
awesome.
that's,
Awesome. Can you get that name to Bob?
Yes.
That would be fantastic.
Point of personal privilege. Can we continue using the mics, please?
Thank you for that reminder.
Yes, yes. I'll speak up louder. Thank you, man. I'm turning my mic.
Were you done, Michael?
Yes, I'm finished.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Let's see. I attended the Welcome Back picnic for staff that was here, and I know you two were there. You didn't mention it, but you were there. I also came for at least part of that joint hearing that was here, and also was just really impressed with our ability to host that. Was pretty cool. I went to the staff budget forum. I went to last week, I think it was, I don't know if it was Wednesday or Thursday, but I went to the Dreamers rally that they did down at Veterans Park. And it was really, I know it wasn't a college event, but it was pretty much pulled together by the Dreamers here at the college. And it was just really great to see the community supporting them, and also just to see how articulate and courageous they are. So I'm glad that we're continuing to support them. And went to the Shakespeare play up at Upper Valley campus, took my 7 and 11-year-old. The 7-year-old went right over his head, but he loved the costumes. And the 11-year-old really got it. He was laughing, and on the way home, we had a fantastic conversation in the car all about Shakespeare and the history of plays and story and poetry, and it was just fantastic. So excited to be able to get that little gateway play for him. And then went to the Police Academy graduation, which was actually really fun. I have been to a couple of them now, but that one in particular was just really, really nice. I don't know, just the smaller group, or had some fantastic speakers, and it was really good. And then, of course, the bond feasibility study this afternoon. So, busy month.
Kyle.
So I have currently been indisposed, and as I was going through my personal experience, I just couldn't stop thinking about the future that I think we're all building here and the future of Napa Valley College. I just want to thank everybody in the room tonight, the board, President Kraft, Oscar, all of you guys. Having a kid now and thinking about his future and education, you guys give me a lot of hope in the direction that we're moving in as a team, so thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Well, I attended the Police Academy graduation also, and it did have a different feel to it. And I don't know if it was just because it was smaller, or there was a little more time for speaking, and we heard more about each of the graduates, so that might have been part of it. Other than that, I don't really have much that I remember, so I will take a question. I see a hand up here before we...
Not a question. I needed to add to my report, I suppose.
I'm sorry, Manveer. You know, at this hour is just...
It'll be quick.
You had your opportunity. We even put you on a committee. We'll give you one more chance.
I forgot to mention, I did speak to Dr. Kraft about the Meet the Board event. So that will be coming down the pipeline in the future. And I wanted to add, since I spend more time with you in one room than probably anybody, I will be tagging this semester. I'm doing that right now. So that makes me part of a small group of students in California who do community college in 2 years. So hopefully next year I will not be here.
In a good way.
In a good way, and that sounds bad, but I didn't know how else to say that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 15, continuance of closed session. Not needed. 16, announcement of future meetings. 16.1, we have the special meeting, the Board of Trustees self-evaluation on the 29th of this month, up Valley.
Yes, and I would say that, although the program starts briskly at 9, 8:30 is fine, and we'll, for coffee and stuff. So I'd rather entertain the day so we can really hit it at 9. So
please be on time.
Yeah, plan on
Okay, let's pull that till later. Anything else, Dr. Kraft, on that?
No, that's it.
I'm sorry? No double secret missions. That's next month. And then we do have our October regular meeting on the 12th.
You have something?
No, I'm just.
Okay, there being no other business, we are adjourned.
Thank you.